get started here. I'm Jenny Austin. I'm the Lakes and Ponds Program Manager. I began in my position last October and been kind of developed in wake sports and all these, use of public waters rules. That's not the only thing that my program does. We do a lot of restoration work, monitoring of lakes and ponds, permitting and shoreland habitat and species management. So I just wanted to welcome everyone and encourage the philosophy here of not necessarily having a polarized discussion, that, there's a lot of different perspectives and a lot of detail in these rules that we've proposed, that we're really hoping for some constructive, hey, on page this and line this, we think the language would be better to say this, or, that kind of constructive comments would be really helpful to us. Of course, we welcome any comments, and everyone's comments will be responded to eventually. And I just wanted to do a shout out to Laura DeLugalecki, who has been our policy and outreach coordinator and queen of baking, and just an all-around wonderful person trying to balance all these interests and all these voices. Job. Hand it over to her, but actually, this is Lizzie Gallagher.
Hi everyone, Lizzie Gallagher. I'm also in the Lakes and Ponds program, and I work on aquatic invasive species and cyanobacteria. I'm making sure the audio is working online right now.
Lizzie and I are just here as helpers, and I apologize if I have to run out of the room because I have a little bit of a cough and runny nose, but hopefully that to myself.
Well, welcome everyone. Does it seem, Lizzie, like everyone can hear online okay?
Hasn't had any comments.
Okay, all right. Well, as Jenny said, I'm Laura DeLugalecki. I'm the Lakes and Ponds Policy and Outreach Coordinator. And today I just wanted to provide a brief overview. I'm going to just talk quickly about some housekeeping items and then go through a quick presentation about why we're here and what we're discussing. And then the majority of this meeting is going to be reserved for public comments. And I'll kind of go through how we'll take those comments, process of what will happen after. So this meeting is being recorded, right, Lizzie? Okay. And usually within 2 or 3 days, I'm able to get the recorded meeting up on our Lakes and Ponds rulemaking webpage. We are hoping to finish this meeting around 8. There were a lot of people who signed up to make comments, and we want to give everyone a chance to be heard. So we're going to do the best we can. If you spoke last week in Brandon and you were planning to say the same thing, you may consider not speaking again. Obviously, it's up to you. But
we cannot hear you.
We've lost voice.
We've lost everything.
Lost audio.
is this better?
No, that was not.
Lost audio.
Is this better? Can you hear me? Okay. Okay, great. I don't know what happened, but somehow the room got muted. I was able to unmute. Okay. Okay, sorry about that, everybody. I don't know when exactly you got muted. So again, I'll just say real quick, the meeting is recorded. We'll have it available on our website within a couple days. We are aiming to finish the meeting. Is it still bad audio?
The audio sounds okay to me.
Sounds fine. Yeah, sounds good to me.
If everyone can mute online, that might help people that are having audio issues.
It's not quite loud enough.
You might need to adjust the setting on your computer.
I have it up as high as it will go.
I can hear just fine.
I can hear fine.
I can hear fine.
So can I.
That's enough.
All right, well then we'll just carry on. So again, let's all just remember to be civil and respectful in our comments. I think that we have more goals in common than differences, and we all care about a lot about these lakes and want what's best for them. So let's all remain respectful and open-minded. And public comments, written comments will be accepted until 4:30 p.m. on February 20th. Just so you guys know, we have almost 400 already. So people are engaged. This is the current rulemaking timeline that we're in, and most of you are aware that there's a whole bunch of things that happened prior to this timeline. But I'm kind of just starting at this current rulemaking effort. But in June of 2025, we announced our intent to begin rulemaking on the use of public waters rules, and we had a webinar to explain some of these proposed changes in the summer, and we held 2 pre-rulemaking public meetings and had a public comment period. We received a lot of feedback and reviewed that and incorporated it to get our submission for formal rulemaking. And that was submitted to the Interagency Committee on Administrative Rules in November. And then in December, ICAR, that Interagency Committee on Administrative Rules, moved us to go into formal rulemaking, and that's where we are now. We're having the public comment meetings and the public comment period. And so the purpose of our meeting is to satisfy that public input requirement of formal rulemaking. And more importantly, it's to hear your feedback that on our rulemaking process and incorporate that feedback. And so as Jenny mentioned, we're looking for ideas, wording suggestions, things that we haven't thought of yet, ways to improve these proposed rules. So your suggestions, and you read them and consider them. Just really quickly, just to provide context, the use of public waters rules authority comes from statute that was adopted in, I believe it was 1969. It allowed an entity of the state to make rules basically to manage recreational conflict on public lakes. And it wasn't until 1994 that the use of public waters rules document that we have today was adopted. And then in 2012, it used to be administered by the Water Resources Board, but in 2012, that authority was handed over to the agency. And so under the authority of these rules, we can manage recreational conflicts and also address aquatic nuisance control issues in those use of public waters rules. And specifically, we can regulate vessels, speed limits, size of motors, time of day or location, and restrictions on specific uses. Is everybody having trouble hearing, or is it just some people?
It's definitely some people. There's a little bit of connection issue potentially outside of the room. The only other comment that is addressable is that no one can see you.
Yeah, I know it's kind of.
Here, fine.
Okay, all right. So when rulemaking is deemed necessary to resolve a conflict, so if there's a potentially a conflict and we agree that there's a conflict and it warrants a rule, we're required to make a rule that uses the least restrictive approach to addressing that conflict. We aim to use objective decision-making. If there are multiple issues that affect, if a similar issue affects multiple water bodies, we try to use uniform, consistent decision-making across the state. And our goal is to balance natural resources protections with the preservation of public access to public waters. So I see people asking me, the problem is the room camera is pointed at the audience and not at me. So I'm just not on the camera. I don't know. I don't know if that would do anything. Okay, so I'm going to go over these proposed changes very quickly, section by section, and then we'll get into the public comment section portion of this meeting. So these proposed changes that we've put forth are extensive throughout the entire set of rules. They're not just about wake sports. They're about the entire set of use of public waters. There is on the Lakes and Ponds rulemaking webpage, there's you can see all the proposed changes as well as a summary of those changes. So section 1 of the rules was called applicability and purpose. And one thing that was a little odd is that there was no purpose statement. So we added a purpose statement, and then we added references to another statute that regulates motorboat usage or vessel usage and our enforcement authority. And so cross-referencing these other statutory authorities help clarify our authority and strengthen our regulations. In section 2, it was originally called consideration of petitions filed under 1424. And we add in the language consideration of agency-led rulemaking and petitions because there's always been the authority for the agency to make its own rules without a petition, but it didn't really explain that in the use of public waters rules. So we were just clarifying that if we make rules of our own motion versus from a petition, that we're held to the same review standards. Also, the rules were a little disorganized in that they had information about petition review in various sections. And so we combined that section and added some criteria for what an administratively complete petition looks like. We also added some modernization into public meeting requirements. And then we added a section on municipal delegation. So the existing rules are very vague with their criteria for municipal delegation. And so we added language to explain what types of delegation are available to communities, their conditions that are required in order to receive delegation, and then the roles and the responsibilities of both the agency and the municipality. So section 3 is probably one of the sections that you all are most interested in. This is the section that talks about specific rules for inland lakes in Vermont. So these are the lakes that their borders are completely within the state. So these don't apply to Lake Champlain or Lake Memphremagog or the Connecticut River tributaries. Again, it had a bunch of information about how to submit a petition. We put that all in section 2. We added language in this section requiring a 500-foot offset for wake sports activities from designated loon nesting sites. Currently, it's 300 feet for any wake creating boat. This would add an additional 200 feet for wake sports specifically. We added a 500-foot safety offset between wake sports and other users. Currently, it's 200 feet, which is the default for any wake creating boat. We've added some flexibility to the language to be able to modify a wake sports zone due to specific conditions, like for example, if a dam were removed, altered, and the water level severely changes in a water body and it can no longer support a wake sport. Rather than going through the whole lengthy rulemaking process, we have the ability to kind of just make that update as needed because it no longer meets the criteria. And then we are proposing to remove the home lake rule provision and replacing it with a requirement that wake boats have to be decontaminated when traveling between lakes. And I just want to say a little bit more about that because I think this is obviously an area that is really important to a lot of people. And I kind of want to, again, just kind of explain our rationale. So the home lake sticker and home lake provision in the existing rules was really well-meaning, but we don't have the infrastructure to track wake boats and register wake boats within the state or coming from different states or from Canada. And we can't just on demand issue stickers to boats coming from elsewhere. So we already have an issue in complying with the way this was written. And we don't have statewide decontamination stations, although that is something we are working towards. But it's really important for us to preserve the intent of the home lake rule, but just from a different approach. The home lake rule never says, and it doesn't say now, it never said that boats can't move between lakes. It just says that boats have to be decontaminated when they move between lakes, which is exactly what the language that we are proposing says. It just kind of removes the administrative burden of the stickers. But we want to meet the same spread prevention goals. Section 4, these are rules that apply to all lakes, whether or not they're fully within the state of Vermont. Traditionally, the only rules that have really been located in Section 4 had to do with aquatic invasive species spread prevention. And so we added a good deal of language in here to better clarify our jurisdiction, the roles and responsibilities of the agency and inspection stations. And then also we added some provision for temporary use restrictions in emergency scenarios. Say, for example, in catastrophic flooding, we could restrict wake creating, any boat, not just a wake boat. We could restrict wake creating vessels during high floodwaters to, prevent pollution or property damage or whatever a temporary emergency scenario would be. Section 5 is definitions. And so this is another section that I think a lot of you are very interested in speaking about tonight, but we are proposing a change to the definition of a wake sports zone. So what the new proposed definition says is that a wake sports zone must have at least 100 acres of area that is 20 feet deep and 500 feet from shore on all sides, and at least 3,000 feet long. There's also some language in there about allowing some shape normalization and smoothing. Currently, the definition is 50 contiguous acres that is 20 feet deep and 500 feet long. We've also added a definition of an aquatic nuisance species inspection station because this is a term that is in statute and in the rules, but it never really had a definition. So we wanted to add this in here so we could all be on the same page. So that new wake sports zone definition would impact how many lakes are eligible for wake sports in Vermont. It would change it from 30 inland lakes down to 18. And then we also had some proposed changes to the appendices. Mostly they were just kind of disorganized, and there's a number of changes that we are proposed to just clean those up a little bit. So those are the main changes that we're proposing that we have in the formal rulemaking process now. Most of these changes did come from public input. We've been engaged with a few small groups on some specific topics that we know are still controversial and that we still have, areas that could be refined. One of those is on lakes that have received alum treatments or phosphorus inactivation treatments. How would we manage the activity of wake sports on those lakes any differently? That specifically affects Lake Carmi and Lake Morey. We've had a lot of feedback about our proposed change to the definition of a wake sports zone of 100 acres. And we've had conversations about whether there's room for flexibility or nuance in some of the lakes close to that 100 acre threshold. And then we've also had conversations about our proposed home lake rule replacement language. We also just internally, after looking at this, we think that there's some value. A change that we're interested in making is repeating some of that wake sports specific decontamination language in Section 4. We have a clause in Section 3 that says it applies to Lake Champlain, but we think it'd be important to call it out and put it in Section 4 as well. And so it's really valuable to continue to hear your feedback on these particular areas among all the other areas, these proposed rule changes. So as I mentioned, the public comment period is open until February 20th at 4:30. You can submit your comments online. There's a form. And after the comment period closes, we will review the public comments. We will incorporate input and have internal conversations. We will have a written response to the public comments that we will provide to the public. And hopefully we will submit a proposed final rule to LCAR, the Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules, and a new rule would be adopted. So, you know, I don't have exact timelines on these after the public comment period is closed because, you know, we don't know exactly how long those will take. In an ideal world, we would have new rules in place for the voting season, but who knows how things will go. There's some legislation that could slow down our rulemaking process. So it's all to be determined. Okay, so we're going to switch gears over to the public comment portion of the meeting. I'm going to call on people in the order which they signed up. Some people will be online, some will be in the room. You can just, if you're online, just unmute and you can speak. For those of you in the room, this room has microphones built into the ceiling, so you don't have to get up and speak anywhere. You can just speak from your seat. And, you know, we have a lot of people signed up. We're going to do our best to stay on schedule, but let's try to keep the comments to 2 minutes or less. And I hate cutting people off, but I'm just, you know, trying to be fair and keep the meeting going. So I will be cutting people off. And yeah, if you don't get a chance to say everything you want in the 2 minutes, please submit a comment in writing. And thank you for your involvement in the public process. And again, we'll have a recording of this available. Always email me or Jenny if you have any additional questions. Okay, so with that, I'm going to try to call on people and then let them know the next person in line. I will just. One second. So first up, we do have Beth Torpy, but I believe Diane later was going to read her comment, followed by Ron Scott.
If Diane
Laura,
is not
if-
available, oh, Diane, I'm able to read my comment.
Great,
I
thank
wasn't
you.
sure, so, okay.
Super.
In last week's testimony, I did not hear one wake boat owner protest the home lake rule. Quite the opposite. I heard that wake boat owners do not want to spread invasive species and that they generally stay on their home lakes. The wake boat owners at Seymour collectively wrote a letter supporting home lake rule and were extremely cooperative and helpful when we did our own home lake registration in 2004 and 2005. It's very unusual for seemingly opposing sides to be in agreement on what could potentially be a contentious issue. This indicates to me that there's not a conflict. We're all on the same page, except it appears ANR. The false narrative that has been continuously and consistently put forth by ANR is that they don't have the resources to administer home lake rule. I will repeat again, all of the wake boats in the state do not have to be identified and registered. Only those on the 18 remaining water bodies, probably about 40 wake boats. Local programs will help. Seymour already did theirs 2 years in a row at no cost to ANR. This is very simple and does not have to be unnecessarily complicated. If a wake boat is visiting or not registered, they're simply referred to a non-regulated water body as jet skis are. In the current update, ANR recommends removing the home lake rule and requiring hot water decontamination or 14-day quarantine. Since there is currently no plan, budget, or timeline for hot water decontamination, this part of the rule should be suspended until sufficient services are available. Since a 14-day quarantine loophole is not supported by science, as DEC indicated in a recent meeting, this needs to be reconsidered. This part of the update does not meet the same spread prevention goals. Because of the large amount of residual water in all wake boat ballast, the most responsible and protective thing ANR can do is to keep home lake rule, remove the decontamination requirement until services are available, and remove the quarantine loophole. This does not create a conflict or require more ANR resources. Thank you.
And next we have Ron Scott, followed by Tom Ward. Ron Scott? All right, we'll go to Tom Ward, followed by Susan Gresser.
Hi, my name is Ron Scott. I'm going to speak pretty quickly to get into 2 minutes, but I'm the president of the board of directors of the Lochern Foundation, which operates Camp Lochern on Lake Fairley. To give you a little history, Camp Lochern was founded in 1916 and is one of 5 camps on Fairley, all of which have been operating for over 100 years. These camps are among the oldest in the United States, and Lake Fairley is widely regarded as one of the birthplaces of organized children's camping in America. Camp Lochern itself is one of the oldest continuously operating summer camps for girls in the country. Our belief is that Lake Fairley's size and layout are simply not conducive to wake surfing boats, and we strongly support the 100-acre rule with no exception for lakes less than that. The wake surfing zone is designated by the state of Vermont as extremely limited, effective suitably for only 1 wake boat at a time. If multiple wake boats were to arrive, there would be no practical way to enforce that limitation. Discussion has been held that the owner operator of a wake boat currently using the lake has been operating responsibly. While this may be the case, additional wake boats could come to the lake at any time, fundamentally changing its character and safety. These boats create large, powerful wakes that reduce visibility, disrupt calm water conditions, create unpredictable hazards. For a child on a paddleboard, in a canoe, small sailboats and rowboats, those conditions can become dangerous in an instant. This is not about being anti-boating. Lake Fairley has long supported motorboats, water skiing, and shared recreational use. That balance has worked for generations. However, wake surfing and enhanced wake sports dramatically increase the scale, intensity, and impact of boating activity on a lake that is used daily by hundreds of children. Camp Lochern alone serves approximately 380 girls each summer, ages 7 to 15, along with 120 staff members. The other camps on the lake are of similar size, and our campers regularly use the lake for swimming, sailing, paddleboarding. For
Thanks,
these
Ron.
reasons, we
Sorry,
strongly
less than 2 minutes, sorry. Thank you. Okay, so next we've got Tom Ward, followed by Susan Gresser.
Hello, my name is Tom Ward. I'm a Vermont. My family has owned a cabin on Lake Fairley for over 2024 statewide rulemaking addressed environmental impacts, but as ANR acknowledged, did not consider public safety. The proposed rule changes, a 100-acre minimum wake sport zone and a 500-foot setback from other users are necessary to correct that omission. No new science is required. Lake Fairley and a dozen other lakes protected by these rule changes are physically incapable of supporting wake sports safely. This is not a matter of preference or fairness. It's a matter of physics and geometry. A wake surfing run creates an impact area 1,000 feet wide. Lake Fairley's wake sport zone averages only about 1,000 feet across. A single boat operating in the center impacts the entire zone. This is not shared access. In narrower sections, when wake boats drift off center, wake boat impacts spill into the 500-foot shoreline safety buffer, and if run near the edge of the zone, can reach the shoreline, compromising safety of campers and other users. Science shows that 500 feet is already a compromise. Research from the St. Anthony Falls Laboratory confirms that wake boat wave power, the force that erodes shorelines and knocks people off paddleboards, does not equate to ski boat wave power for more than 600 feet. You cannot negotiate with physics. Larger lakes like Bomoseen, whose wake sport zone is 12 times Fairley's, may absorb these impacts. Small lakes cannot. Claims of no conflict ignore the facts. When wake boats operate, swimmers and paddlers leave the water. That is fear-based displacement, not coexistence. The use of public water rules require protecting normal and previous uses. On Lake Fairley, those include families in Vermont's highest concentration of young campers who have safely shared this water for generations. A successful rule would not force them off. Please prioritize the safety of many over the recreation of the few. I urge DEC to adopt these rules as written and to implement them in time for the summer's boating and camping seasons. Thank you.
All right, next we've got Susan Gresser, followed by Francine Chibnall.
Susan Gresser, Averill Lakes.
We cannot support the removal of the home lake sticker rule and proof of decontamination. This will heighten the risk of AIS spread, specifically zebra mussels on the 18 allowable lakes, 11 of which are in the NEK. 115 wake boats visited those 11 lakes last summer, according to your greeter data, which is limited by greeter hours. That does not include those on Memphremagog, Wallace, the Connecticut River, or those that will now travel due to the small pool of allowable water bodies. Wake boats would be held to a lesser standard than all other recreational boats. Look at your statute, 1454, they cannot drain completely. The home lake rule and proof of decon was one of the few limiting tools available to the NAK lakes that are remote. Municipalities are small or non-existent, and greeter programs are partially funded through a limited grant and aid program. Inland lakes residing in the LCB, Lake Champlain Basin, have access to 4 decon stations and larger grant funding. For us, the closest decon is 3-hour drive. Eliminating the home rule and acknowledging that there will be no operating decon stations for wake boats in the NEK in the near future, hence no proof of decon, removes a meaningful layer of protection from our cleanest lakes. It also abdicates DEC's responsibility embedded in its mission to protect, maintain, enhance, and restore the health of Vermont's lakes. No single measure can fully prevent the spread of AIS, but overlying safeguards such as the home lake sticker program, full-time breeder stations, and decontamination stations can slow the spread. Much of the infrastructure does not exist in the NEK. Removing 1 or 2 of these elements of protection before the others are operational increases risk during the transition period. Containment is necessary. Once AIS is introduced, the costs and devastations are enduring, and it is our communities who bear the impact economically, aesthetically, and recreationally. We propose a temporary moratorium on wake boats coming to those eligible lakes from away until the necessary infrastructure is in place. Thank you very much.
Right. Next, we've got Francine Chittenden, followed by Eric Chittenden.
My name is Francine Chittenden. I'm a 50-year resident of Waterbury and a board member on the Friends of Waterbury Reservoir. I support the proposed changes in the rule. This change will address many of the safety concerns raised through the petition process from several lakes. I'm pleased to see that the recommendations being put forward by ANR are based on scientific facts. A scientific meta-analysis of wake surfing effects conducted by the Terra Vigilis Environmental Services Group in 2024 concludes, and I quote, "There is an impressive consistency in the studies being conducted with which demonstrates larger, faster, high energy, large displacement wave risks across multiple areas, including surface threats to other vessels, near shoreline disruptions, bottom scrubbing effects, shoreline structure impacts, nutrient release into the water columns, deep penetration propeller downwash, and wave attenuation distances, prompting changes to traditional buffer distances. I have heard no scientific information from the wake sports industry to support their position that no additional regulation is necessary. Lake Bomazeen hosts the most wake boats and has the highest number of AIS of any lake in Vermont outside of Lake Champlain. I do not believe that they are a good model for the rest of us. The amended rule will conserve the water quality and recreational safety of the Waterbury Reservoir, along with many other lakes similarly situated. The word conservation is defined as the preservation and protection of land and other natural resources for enjoyment by future generations. This decision will affect generations to come. As a proud Vermonter, I support the proposed changes to the Agency of Natural Resources use of public waters rules. Thank you for letting me speak.
All right, next up, we've got Eric Chittenden, followed by Chip Snell.
Thank you. My name is Eric Chittenden, a native Vermonter, Waterbury resident, and a board member of the Friends of Waterbury Reservoir. I support ANR's proposed changes enthusiastically. They do not go far enough. AIS is a major problem. Most Vermont lakes have AIS. These species can spread rapidly, damaging native ecosystems and more. We go from some of the least infected inland lakes in Vermont, such as Lake Willoughby and Westmore, being least affected, and to Lake Bomoseen and Castleton listed as having more AIS than any other Vermont lake. After 60 years as a merchant seaman around the world, I retired 5 years ago, licensed as a sea captain on the largest ships in the world. Several of the very same invasive species exist in the Earth's oceans as well as in our lakes. In 2004, international ballast water regulations were adopted and then entered into force in 2017. The objective is to minimize the transfer of aquatic organisms and pathogens via ballast water and sediments, like issues facing wake boats. These standards require exchanging ballast water at least 200 nautical miles from land, 200 nautical miles from land, and 600 feet deep. That's extreme and a good way to go. This speaks to the awareness and urgency for action by world leaders. We need to take bold action, starting with the passing rules, and give ANR the tools they need to do their work. That is protecting our lakes. Vermont calls for itself brave little state. Do we have the will to do what this moment calls for? That is to enact rules designed to protect our waters. Thanks for listening and for the opportunity to speak.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Chip Stone, followed by Gretchen Morgan.
Hi, I'm Chip Stone. I'm from East Montpelier. I'm a skier, swimmer, paddler, and sailor. In my judgment, the proposed rules fall short of protecting safe water use by Vermont's traditional users. A more appropriate wake sports to our largest lakes that have ample space for the activity. In my judgment, that would be Champlain, the Connecticut River Lakes, Magog, and Bomoseen. That said, I support DEC's proposed compromise rule and explicitly as it relates to zone size and distances from others in or on the water, and encourage its enactment. A few years ago, I was sized on the Waterbury Reservoir. The boat wasn't close. I wasn't looking for it, and its surf wave caught me broadside. We now avoid all conflict with wake boats by leaving if and when they are present. As you complete this rulemaking process, I encourage you to pay attention to the evolution of this activity. For the 5 years this process has been going on, ballasted boats have grown to exceed 6 tons in mass, now have in excess of 600 horsepower with sophisticated hydraulic tech that can generate long, high-energy 4 to 6 foot waves, much higher than just a few years ago, and they get bigger every year. This has been a long effort, and I thank you for your hard work on this issue and giving reasonable consideration to the safety of traditional users and the health of our inland lakes. Thank you.
Okay, next we've got Gretchen Morgan, followed by Jennifer Andrew.
Good evening. I'd like it on record that I oppose the proposed 2025 rules. However, I want to ask a more fundamental question about what problems are we actually trying to solve. First, if the primary concern is AIS, then we need to be honest about the real drivers. We know similar conversations are happening across the US, and research shows that AIS spreads is driven by overall boat traffic, not one specialized category of boats. Singling out wake boats does not meaningfully address the dominant pathways for these invasive species. Or is the issue safety? We again need consistent regulation. Traditional ski boats travel at high speeds, tubers require erratic turns, and early morning fishing boats speed across the lake at the exact time swimmers seek calm waters. Safety studies consistently show that speed, visibility, and operator behavior, not boat type, are the primary risk factors in recreational boating incidents across the country. We need better boater education. Or is the concern shoreline erosion? Research confirms that wake energy exists across all types of motorboats operating near shore, not just wake boats. Studies repeatedly show that distance from the shore and water depth matter more than the label on the boat. Thousands of motorboats travel 200 feet from shore all summer, producing cumulative impacts far greater than the very small subset of wake boats. Wake boats account for under 1% of registered boats in Vermont. Other states actively debating restrictions acknowledge that targeting wake boats alone will not solve any of these problems in any measurable way. I want to be clear, I'm not opposed to regulations, and I'm not advocating for eliminating all motorboats. What I'm saying is that this effort will not deliver meaningful environmental or safety improvements because it addresses a niche concern while ignoring broader issues. I strongly urge the Vermont Agency of Natural Resources to pause and maintain the 2024 rules for wake boats. Ask what outcomes you are trying to achieve and whether this approach is the best use of limited time and resources of your agency. Vermont lakes deserve thoughtful, evidence-based policy, not restrictions that will not drive meaningful results. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, so next we have Jennifer Andrews, followed by Chris Owen.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Andrews, from Shadow Lake and Glover. I support the new draft of the UPW rules. I implore the DEC to look carefully at the science that recommends more than 500 feet from shore, other vessels, docks, and swimmers. Look carefully at the science that recommends the 20-foot depth to be extended to 30. The newest science must always be considered and incorporated. Lack of state designated decontamination equipment and facilities make the likelihood of aquatic invasive species transmission between lakes due to the inability to access and decontaminate wake boat ballasts is exponential. Breeders must have the ability to redirect boats that are unable to be accessed to a state designated decon station prior to entry. I assert that many state parks have the infrastructure already and the people power to provide this. Choose 3 locations. Also, the time boats must be dry before next launch should be changed from 15 days to 30, as per recent scientific data that has been submitted. I appreciate that the DEC has recognized the kind of damage wake sports do when allowed on inland lakes, especially small ones such as Shadow. This small lake cannot abide wake boats that weigh dry weight from 3,400 pounds to over 4,000 and on, as Chris has mentioned. This lake cannot support engines that are capable of speeds up to 58 miles per hour and have 340 horsepower. This is information from a 2026 Malibu. This lake and other lakes will be permanently damaged if wake boats and their tabs, which are apparatus that are attached to the stern of a wake boat to make the wake even bigger, are introduced. As the DEC knows from receiving and reading the Shadow Lake petition to prohibit wake sports, there are many reasons to prohibit wake boats on Shadow. To name a few: safety. Our dam is needing significant repair.
The 2-minute mark. Oh, sorry. We've hit the 2-minute mark.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I
Thank you.
totally support the new draft UPW rule.
Thanks. So next we have Chris Owen, followed by Jack Witness.
Need to unmute himself again.
He's trying to talk. He's muted.
Chris, I think you're muted.
Thank you. My name is Chris Owen, a Holland Pond camp owner for over 35 years, and my message is simple tonight. Wake sports hurt Vermont fisheries. During this debate, aquatic habitat has received little attention. I fished for 50 years here, and tonight I offer an angler's perspective. Sport fishing contributes $170 million annually to Vermont's economy. It's a revered Vermont tradition. The health of fisheries and the fishing economy depend on a robust aquatic food chain. Our lake bottoms have been stable for thousands of years, since glaciers retreat. A food chain of plants, bugs, and fish have evolved and now thrive in a delicate biological web. Regrettably, wake sports tear up this littoral zone. The science: 2 years ago, a Connecticut study concluded, quote, findings establish a 26-foot propeller downwash impact for wake boats in surf mode. This impact does not occur with conventional water ski or cruising boats. A Western Colorado study concluded, quote, wake boat slipstreams have potential to affect bed sediments at 33 feet of depth. To quote the Vermont Federation of Lakes and Ponds, depth of 30 to 40 feet would reduce the likelihood of lake bottom disruption. Last year, I made a public records request for Fish and Wildlife Department documents about wake boats. Among the 321 records produced, staff scientists said, quote, wake sports represent a new and potentially greater threat to fish and fishing. Negative effects include turbulence that displaces fish eggs, juvenile fish, and macroinvertebrates, disturbance of aquatic plants, increased turbidity, and spread of aquatic invasive species. The science is clear. There should be no wake sports shallower than 30 feet. Please adopt this standard to protect Vermont fisheries. Thank you.
Thanks. I think we got 90% of what you said. The very beginning of your comment, there was a big echo. So yeah, if you want to put any of that information in writing also, that would be helpful just in case we miss it. So now we have Jack followed by Diane.
Hello, I live on Lake Raponda in Wilmington, where I volunteer as a greeter, and I'm here tonight representing Responsible Wakes for Vermont Lakes position. We strongly endorse the DEC's proposed wake boat rule. Their amendments represent a major step forward. As indicated in the DEC petition summary, the proposed amendments primarily benefit is to better address safety concerns. It will prohibit wake sports on up to 13 small to medium-sized lakes of the currently 30 allowing this activity. This prohibition is huge. It's exactly the protection our group sought but did not achieve during the 2024 rulemaking. The rule will also bring important secondary benefits, including improved lake health and water quality, along with reduced risk of aquatic invasive species spread. Despite Responsible Wake's strong support for the amended rule, we recommend that science and reasoning be used to better protect those lakes that will remain wake sports eligible. Specifically, we recommend first, a minimum wake sport depth of 30 feet, as you've heard supported on emerging new science. Second, 700-foot setback from other lake users, shorelines, loon nests, also grounded in science. And third, clear language stating that wake sports are not a normal recreational use, unlike swimming, fishing, water skiing, and others. And the do no harm precautionary principle should be added and applied. Finally, we are disappointed with the decision to eliminate the home lake rule and remain concerned that the DEC's current ballast tank decontamination solution is ineffective and not adequately science-based. We urge the DEC to consider these additional protection. Let's get the proposal enacted quickly. In time for this summer's boating season. Thank you.
All right, so next we have Diane later, followed by Sarah Page. Diane?
Yes, can you hear me? Thank you, Laura. Last spring, the DEC summarily denied 9 lake petitions seeking to prohibit wake sports on their lakes. In doing so, the DEC committed to addressing shared concerns in revisions to the use of public waters rules. Increasing the size of wake sports zones would protect some smaller lakes by removing them from the eligible list. Increasing buffers to shorelines and others on the water increase safety for those who will continue to share remaining wake sports eligible lakes. It's critical that these changes are adopted immediately to improve safety on our lakes, a concern shared by the lakes submitting those petitions. New scientific studies are already telling us some proposed changes still don't go far enough. In states where wake sports are regulated by state laws based on the very permissive Water Sports Industry Association's model law, it's already too late for many lakes. Aside from the environmental damage caused by overly large wakes, people on those lakes who used to enjoy the water regularly report they avoid the water when wake boats are in use because they're concerned about their safety. We have a chance now to get at least some of this right. Proposed changes in the interest of safety bring immediate, absolute protection for more than a handful of our smaller lakes, and they make our remaining wake sports eligible lakes safer too. Please adopt these changes and make sure that they're in place for the 2026 boating season. I remain disappointed that decontamination still remains a problem seeking a solution, and that a home lake rule that would provide a measure of protection for our water quality is being eliminated. That said, and taking a very pragmatic approach, right now we need to do what we can do, adopt and implement what we can. for the 2026 voting season. Thank you, Laura.
Thanks. All right, so next we've got Sarah Page, followed by Helen Drew.
Hi, I'm Sarah Page and a summer resident of Westmore, so I'll speak for Lake Willoughby, but sympathize with any lake or pond trying to cope with wake boats. It is the state's job to protect the health of our environment and preserve the beauty so that we may enjoy it going forward. The spread of aquatic invasives happens easily and quickly. Only small particles are necessary to infect a clean lake. People have shared recent compelling evidence with great eloquence. As I see it, the bottom line is until the intention of home lake rule is realized and decontamination facilities are in place and a certification process for all wake boats, no matter their place of origin, they should be prohibited in Vermont. The consequences for environment and the budget for cleanup is too great. My second concern is safety. In an analysis of St. Anthony Falls Lab, wake boat wave energy equals that of a ski boat only after traveling more than about 600 feet, well beyond the proposed 500-foot buffer. The regulations need to be strengthened to reflect this. As for enforcement of this on Willoughby, where I have no cell service, I would have no way to call if a wake boat is a problem or danger. I've heard several wake boat owners state that there have been few or even no reports of problems. To them, I'd say that the reporting system isn't functional. If people don't know how to report, and if there's no cell service, how can people report? Just because we can't get their registration number or call to report doesn't mean they aren't being a problem, as many swimmers, boaters, and paddleboarders have attested in sometimes terrifying detail. For this reason, wake boats certainly do not belong on Willoughby, and I would say shouldn't be permitted in Vermont until these problems are addressed. Thank you.
Next, we have Helen Drew, followed by Lauren Splatt. Helen Drew. We'll go to Lauren Splatt and then Tom Burdick.
Thank you. Good evening. This is Lauren Splatt, and I just want to state for the record, I oppose all these changes in the 2025 proposal. I'm a lifelong resident of Vermont, have boated many years on all of our lakes and ponds all over Vermont, both powered and non-powered boats. My background is in science, biology, and business, so I approach this from both a research and practical application perspective. Science follows a structured path. Question, research, data, analysis, conclusion, policy application. My question tonight is, I have a few questions, is focused on whether that process has been followed for these proposed changes. First, my thoughts, and then I have a few questions actually for you, Laura and Jenny. Hopefully you can give quick answers too, just to help with my understanding tonight. The two topics that I have to discuss, the first one is regarding the proposed changes, regarding specifically the 3,000-foot straight run requirement, the 500-foot buffer update, and the increase from 50 to 100 acres. It is written in your Lakes and Ponds facts page and procedure for determining wake sport zones page on the website that is derived from public comment. I'm concerned as a policy adjustment of this magnitude from a scientific standpoint normally requires new evidence showing a previous standard was insufficient in Vermont inland lake environments. My second topic I wanted to was just regarding how the process of public comment is calculated. You've stated in the past, all comments are created equally. As someone with a business background, I understand the importance of decision, documentation, and outcome measurement. Now my questions. The first question that I have, which again, even if it's a quick answer, hopefully you can answer that, is since the 2024 rule went into effect, what new data-specific Vermont-based research has been conducted that directly supports each of these exact numeric changes, specifically the 3,500-foot buffer and the acreage change?
Well, just kind of as a policy for tonight, because we have so many people on the agenda, we're not going to respond to comments, but this is something that we will respond to in writing to make sure that this question is addressed. I'm sorry, it's just in the interest of time.
Nope. That's fine. Then I'll just, my other question, which is probably, it'll be more of a comment then. So on the second half is, I'm just trying to understand the methodology of the online form, which again, you don't have to answer. I just wanted to state for record. The online form, which has been stated as a preferred method of communication, which does seem to streamline for your team, and I understand that. However, I wanted to make sure I understand it because the methodology seems to be leading the answer structure and influencing the results. What I'm referring to, which many have not checked out the form yet, the online form, the last question, which is question number 5, requires the respondent. What's that?
It has been more than 2 minutes. There is I will just respond to this real quick. So at the very bottom of the form, there's a question. I think it says something about generally whether or not you support the proposed rules. And that's just kind of, I threw that question on there as just kind of a general interest, as in a way to summarize information in like a really broad way, but that's not, we don't, it's not a popularity contest. It's not like we got 800 comments that say this and 200 that say this. That's not what we use. It's kind of just more internal curiosity of, so it doesn't come into the decision making. But
okay, so just really quick, in fairness, then I request then there's a 5th option, which is I oppose the proposed changes. They went too far because you have too many on the other side.
So we have to go to the next person, Tom Burdick, followed by Penny Soder. Tom? Okay. Penny Soder, followed by Gay Martin.
Yes, I'm Penny Soder. I have been a Vermont property owner for nearly 20 years. I am an avid boater and have enjoyed much time on Vermont lakes. And I'm very concerned about these proposed new rules, especially since you enacted these last rules in 2024. It's almost like there's not been enough time given to see if those even work. But anyway, I have so many questions and I don't have enough time in 2 minutes to get to everything. But I'll just mention a few things. I'm very concerned about the 3,000-foot run. Speaking about the proposed 3,000-foot wake sports run requirement. Let's see, the agency's facts explains this length is based on an assumption that wakeboards typically travel 10 to 12 miles an hour for about 3 minutes, which equals roughly 3,000 feet. That explanation describes boat behavior, not measured environmental impact. The zone determination document shows this number is applied using GIS geometry, not field trials. The 2022 petition that initiated this rulemaking focused on depth and shoreline buffers and proposed 60 acres, but did not base zone length on field-tested shoreline or sediment studies. Wake science already exists. Studies such as the McFarland 2018 used instrumented measurements to quantify wake energy and propagation. Dager sediment interaction research shows impacts are strongly depth dependent. None of those studies identify straight line travel length as the primary environmental control variable. So my question is in this regard, what Vermont specific field measurements show that a 3,000-foot straight run reduces environmental impact compared to shorter runs?
2 minutes. Thank you. All right. So next up, we've got Gay Martin, followed by Devin Donegan. Okay. Hello?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on the proposed legislation. For the onset, I am a Vermont resident and a property owner, and my family and I have enjoyed swimming and kayaking and all sorts of water sports on numerous lakes throughout the state. I strongly oppose the legislation from primarily scientific perspectives. As a scientist, I'm very data-driven and very keyed into trying to understand the science behind what the state is trying to achieve. So specifically, and I'm not going to restate all of the questions that some of the others have mentioned, but specifically honing in on the data, following up on their questions, specifically interested to know what Vermont field studies were conducted, and if they were, interested to know what were the primary and secondary objectives of the studies, what were the outcomes of the studies, and were they scientifically significant? Without the data to evaluate the outcomes of the 2024 rule changes and to understand what may or may not be needed going forward, I am strongly opposed to the current proposed legislation. Thank you for the time.
Next, we have Devin Donegan, followed by Tracy Donegan. Devin? Okay. Devin? All right, we'll move to Tracy Donegan. Tracy? All right, then we will move to Liz Bird, followed by Christine Smith.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, hi. My name is Liz Bird. I'm from Rutland, Vermont, and I've been coming to Lake Bomazene in the summers since childhood. And we've owned a home there since 2006. I'd like to speak today about aquatic invasive species, AIS. From a research standpoint, studies show that many types of boats can retain residual water, fishing boats, runabouts, pontoons, and others. But what the science actually points to as the biggest risk factor for AIS spread is not the type of boat, but how frequently the boats move from one lake to another. To date, Vermont hasn't presented data comparing AIS transport risk by vessel category. So I want to ask a question: what Vermont-based data shows that wake boats pose a higher AIS transport risk than other boats that regularly move between lakes? There's also a practical reality that we have to acknowledge, which is that boat wash and decontamination stations are very limited across Vermont, and in many regions they're not easily accessible. Enforcement of existing AIS rules is already difficult. At the same time, the state relies heavily on lake associations and other volunteer groups to monitor and protect lake health. These groups do an incredible amount of work. I'm, have a front row seat to that, but they have no authority to enforce the rules that are already in place or any new rules being considered today. I'm also curious as to what we've done since 2024 with those rules that make these, seem like they're needed. I think the home lake rule is a good idea, but I think that if we're serious about protecting Vermont's lakes, the state needs to take a stronger role, because without adequate infrastructure and consistent enforcement and policies grounded in science and real world conditions, additional vessel-specific regulations are unlikely to achieve the results that we all want.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Christine Smith, followed by, looks like Devin Donegan is on here again, but Devin here. So is Christine Smith here? Christine Smith? And then I'll give Devin Donegan another chance. Okay. Aiden Donegan? Is Aiden Donegan on the call? Next up, we have Eric Splat.
Just a quick
Yes,
reminder.
hello.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
One
Go ahead.
second.
Sorry.
The in-room speakers are quite sensitive, so it is picking up a little bit of like background combo. So just FYI.
Okay, you can go ahead, Eric.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I would like to talk about the necessity of increasing buffers and the 500 feet in the wake zones. The ANR summary frames these changes as improving safety and reducing conflict. The 2024 rule has been in effect for only one season with no reported statewide wake boat enforcement violations presented publicly. Safety-based regulation typically follows documented incident data, yet no Vermont stats have been cited showing injury or shoreline damage under the current rule. What enforcement or incident data shows the existing rule is inadequate? Policy should respond to documented problems. I oppose the proposed changes. The 2024 rule was already the compromise threshold. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Angela Amoya, followed by Richard Scholes.
Hi, thank you. Here tonight to ask to please keep the wake sport regulations that were put in place in 2024. I just want to talk about the aquatic invasive species risk. When AIS concerns were raised in earlier petitions, they were discussed as part of broader lake management challenges, not as a specific problem unique to one type of boat. Scientific studies on invasive species transport show that many types of vessels can retain residual water or plant material. What research consistently highlights is that the most important risk factor is how often boats move between different water bodies, not simply the style or hull design of the boat itself. To my knowledge, Vermont has not presented data that quantifies invasive species spread by specific vessel categories. So my question is, what Vermont-based evidence shows that wake boats present a greater AIS transport risk than fishing boats, pontoons, or other trailered watercraft? I oppose the additional wake-specific restrictions beyond the 2024 rule compromise. Targeting one small segment of boaters without clear comparative data risks distracting from the broader prevention measures that protect all Vermont lakes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we've got Richard Scholes, followed by John Casella.
Hello, my name is Richard Scholes. I have lived in our home on Peachum Pond for more than 27 years. I've been a flat water kayaker avidly for almost 50 years. For more than 20 years, I was the loon monitor here on Peachum Pond. I'm very glad and support the proposed changes. Taking Peachum Pond off the list, I would like to point out two things that I believe are needed as additional responsibilities for wake boat operators. I admit that I have not read all the regulations, so that may be included. But dealing with both people and loon chicks, they tend to wander on a lake. Protecting only the nest is not sufficient because the small loon chicks, which are shepherded around the lake as their parents fish, would be seriously hindered, probably killed, if they came in contact with one of these 3, 5, or 6 foot wake boat wakes. There needs to be something that makes operators responsible for avoiding loons that are in the middle of the wake boat zone. Secondly, the same applies to other boaters. Particularly, I can tell you that it's great fun to surf in a kayak over an ocean wave. It is not going to be possible to keep teens and teenagers from doing the same in their kayaks on these wake boat waves created by other, but by the wake boats themselves, not their own. And that there is therefore the risk that the wake boats.
Minutes. Thank you. Okay, so next we've got John Casella, followed by Nicole McPhee.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
My name is John Casella. I'm a lifelong Vermonter, a lake user, and someone who supports protecting our lakes while keeping them accessible for responsible use. I'm here to oppose the proposed changes to the wake boat rules, including the 3,000-foot run requirement, the expanded 500-foot shoreline buffer, and the increase in required acreage. My concern is simple. These changes expand restrictions without clear Vermont-specific evidence to justify them. The agency's own material explains that the 3,000-foot run is based on assumptions about how long boats typically travel, not on measurements showing reduced shoreline or water quality impacts. The 500-foot buffer is applied uniformly to all shorelines, even though Vermont lakes vary widely in shoreline conditions. The acreage increase raises the same issues. The original petition relied on a 60-acre standard. The proposal increase that increases that to 100 acres, yet I have not seen new data showing the original standard was inadequate, or caused harm. These rules have also only been in effect for a year. I have not seen evidence of enforcement problems, safety issues, or environmental damage under the current framework. There are real consequences here. According to the agency's own summary, these changes would reduce eligible lakes from 30 to 18, specifically limiting access to public waters. My question is straightforward. What Vermont-specific data shows these added restrictions are necessary, and what problems are they solving that the current rules are not? I respectfully urge ANR to pause, enforce the existing rules, and gather Vermont-based data before adopting changes that permanently limit access to shared public waters. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, next we've got Nicole McPhee, followed by Alexa McPhee.
Hi, my name is Nicole McPhee. I'm a Vermont resident and a property owner. I also spend a lot of my summer on the lakes with my kids and boating. And I oppose the new restrictions, specifically the restrictions on use of the wake boat. I also am in favor of the home boat rule. My opposition is that there's no new evidence saying that the existing rules are not sufficient. There's no incidents showing that the wakeboard boats cause harm, that they're dangerous. We surf at much lower speeds than wakeboarding or water skiing, and there's not one documented case of any injuries from that. And if safety is the issue, then we also have to restrict fishing tournaments. My kids have spent many hours and have grown up on the lake boating. The only times they've ever been put in harm's way is when there is a fishing tournament going on, because the fishermen don't care what's in front of them or who's in front of them when they're trying to get their spot. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so next we have Alexa McPhee, followed by Ryan McPhee. Alexa? All right, we'll go to Ryan McPhee.
Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan McPhee. I'm 19 years old and I've been wake surfing in Vermont for the past 11 years. I grew up on a boat, learning how to maneuver it safely, following the rules of the water, and respecting the boats around me. I spend hours a week on the lake every summer and have not seen any incidents involving wake surf boats that would justify pushing the new 500-foot proposal. The agency summarizes the proposed 2026 changes to improve safety and reduce conflict. The 2024 rule has been in effect for only one boating season, and there has been no statewide reports on wakeboard enforcement violations presented to the public. Safety-based regulations usually follow documented incident data, yet no Vermont statistics have been provided showing any incidents involving injury or shoreline damage under the current 2024 rule. While I did not like the 2024 rule, we accepted it and followed it. What enforcement or incident data shows that the existing rule is inadequate? Policy should respond to documented data not emotions and assumptions. I strongly oppose this new rule.
Thank you. Next, we have Michael Kanosh, followed by Barb Twitter.
Thank you. My name is Michael Kanosh. I'm strongly opposed to any additional restrictions to the wake boat rule as it currently exists. I am a 19-year resident, privileged to be in the states of lakes. I have a science background, and I'm confused as that additional appears to be unfair targeting of our recreational pursuits. Conclusions previously drawn have no grounding in reliable scientific method, and they're appear to me to be fraught with bias and poorly drawn inferences. There are well-designed studies surrounding wake dynamics compared to traditional motorboats, as well as nature, and do not support the need for additional restrictions and limitations above what is currently in place. I reside directly on Lake frontage year round, and I get to see the lake outside of the summer months. I often observe waves crashing over my seawall. The worst perpetrator is nature. Non-wake boat motorboats and pontoon vessels also that disregard no wake zones within 200 feet from shore are really next. And these cause much more distress to my land and my family than the small number of wake boats that are in the middle of our lake. These direct observations, I understand, are anecdotal, but they coincide with data from studies like Cowdy and Girard in 2015. The newly proposed restrictions to me appear speculative and make broad assumptions. I would also echo what Vermont trials have been conducted, and are there peer-reviewed methodologies used that would prompt us to change the restrictions that we already have. Policy should not exceed evidence. I respectfully ask the lobby for rule to remain. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Barb Woodard, followed by Bob Woodard. Barb? Bob Woodard?
Yes, this is Bob Woodard here. How are you?
Good, thank you. Go right ahead.
Yes, again, I'm Bob Woodard, and I'm a resident of Vermont. I've been so for most all of my life, and I voted on most of the lakes in Vermont for over 70 some years. And I oppose the changes. The reason for such is I oppose the buffer zone, 500-foot buffer zone, and I believe that wind waves, or I understand that wind waves and wake waves are likely to be similar. Quite often, wind waves exceed what boat wake waves might represent. And the study was done by Gowdy and Giroux in 2015. So that's a quote from that. So I guess I have a question on whether ANR compared the wake energies of the wake and of wave action during storms, events, and so on should be included in the analysis. And so what portion of the shoreline energy comes from wake versus wave action? Contextual comparisons are missing at this point. So I'm wondering whether or not you can include that so we could look at that information. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Greg Woodard, followed by Luke Held.
Thank you. I'm here to speak for 100%. I'm here to speak for 1% of Vermont voters who are being regulated as if they are 100% of the problem. For 75 years, my family has worked to make boating safe and accessible in Vermont, and the increased rules should concern voters in Vermont and elsewhere. I oppose the wake zone rule changes, the definition. The increase in the 3,000-foot zone will exclude 92% of Vermont's inland waterways. And for specific boats doing a specific sport, it's enjoyed by 1% of the boating population. I hear the supportive rules and I hear people who love their lakes, but I also hear fear and foreboding. I hear scientific data collected anywhere but Vermont and on Vermont waterways, yet it's applied to confirm the bias about the wake boats. For example, it's true Lake Bomazene has AIS and has wake boats, but no one mentioned all of the AIS that's happened on Lake Bomazene happened before wake ballast was invented and introduced on Lake Bomazene. What other data could be omitted to confirm, this agenda? It seems to me that it's arbitrary governance, which is the act of rulemaking on a whim, a perceived danger, and it's a slippery slope that these rule changes live on. Doubling down on the rules that have been followed with 100% compliance since the inception not only proves the point of arbitrary governance, but it also ignores 99% of the boaters who make up the majority of transient movement in those instances of AIS. To target wake boats once again will prove these petitions has less to do with the conservation of public waterways and more to do with cultural friction. It is not the Vermont way to push out one group because you see them as conflicting. We've seen this before with environmental concerns with snowboarding in the 80s. Can you imagine if 100% of snowboarding was forced to just 8% of Vermont mountains? The proposed rules would create a pressure cooker that concentrates wake sports, ignores safety concerns, and I urge the DEC to restrict the.
Thank you. We've got to
thank you.
move on. I'm sorry. Next, we've got Luke Held, followed by William Bladen.
I think Luke needs to put his son to bed, but he is strongly against any kind of new regulation. And for that matter, he also mentions that he is against past regulation on wake boats as well. So please add that to your record. Thank you.
Thanks. So next we have William Bladen, followed by Ryan Coughlin.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is William Bladen, and I strongly oppose the changes to wake sports rules. I do support the changes made to the law in 2024 and believe this is the right balance and policy. I have three main points. First, I want to address the 500-foot from objects rule. Boating safety relies on right-of-way and shared responsibility between boats. Right-of-way has a hierarchy. By one participant having 200 feet and the other 500 feet, the responsibility solely shifts to just one participant, the wake boat, who in many cases has a right-of-way due to a person in tow. This is a conflict in boating rules that causes confusion and affects safety. The wake boat has the right-of-way, but the other boat doesn't have to honor it. The distance must be the same for both boats, and I believe 200 feet is the historical and right answer. Second, the 3,000-foot straight line rule. Wave size, hydrodynamic energy, and wave decay rate are not impacted by run length. 3,000 feet is based on assumed boater behavior, not environmental impact or safety. Third, the 50 to 100 acre rule. Similar to the 3,000-foot rule, this change does not increase environmental protections. It decreases it as well as decreases safety. The impact of wakes on the environment is primarily based on lake depth and distance to shore within the context of shoreline composition. Increasing from 50 to 100 acres does not change either of those variables. However, it does have two negative secondary consequences. First, it reduces the number of eligible lakes, which means more wake boats will travel. This raises the risk of invasive species by encouraging lake-to-lake movement. Secondly, that increase in wake boat density means more boats and less lakes. For safety, the goal should be to spread boaters out, not to consolidate them. My question is, what scientific data was used to determine that 3,000 feet and 100 acres materially impact safety or the environment in a positive way? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Ryan Coughlin, followed by Marty Maher.
Hello, my name is Ryan Coughlin. I am a Vermonter born and raised, and I strongly oppose these new rules that are being put in place. The question I ask is regarding the AIS considerations. AIS prevention rules apply broadly to vessels, focusing on decontamination transport prevention statewide. In the 2022 petition discussed AIS risks, but addresses them with broader lake management concerns, not as a unique characteristic of like one vessel class. And, AIS transport studies show that many vessels types retain residual water. Research indicates movement frequency between bodies of water that is a primary risk factor for not just one type of boat. And Vermont has not presented any data quantifying that AIS is spread by one specific vessel. So my question is, what Vermont data shows that wake boats specifically present a higher risk for AIS transport than any other types of boat, fishing boats, runabout boats, even pontoon boats? So that's my question for the group to please address before instilling more rules. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Marty Maher, followed by Corinne Rodrigue.
Hi, my name's Marty Marr. I'm a Vermont resident and a property owner, waterfront property owner. My comment and question tonight is around the 3,000 foot wake sports run requirement. Based off the FAQs that the ANR has provided, this is arrived at based on speed and time, and basically saying that the average run for someone on a surfboard is going to be about 3,000 feet. What I'm not seeing here is a connection of that distance to any environmental impact or any safety improvement. The scientific research has shown impacts are strongly depth dependent. This is addressed with the current 20-foot depth requirement. I haven't seen anything that supports a 3,000 foot length of run would be any better than, say, 1,000 or 2,000 feet. So there seems to be a lacking of data in that number, and there's not really clarity on how or where that came from. I know we're not doing questions in this session, but I guess something that could be answered in writing is what data is out there to support that length of run being better for both safety or environmental impact. And then with respect to the 500 foot buffer zone, just a practical question around how we expect to enforce that type of a measurement when we're putting a requirement of a distance on two objects that are moving and separately controlled. I just don't see how that could be measured or enforced. And so it doesn't make sense to me to be putting things into rule that we can't have proper enforcement of. So I oppose the changes to the regulation. I think
time just ended.
Okay,
thank you.
Thanks.
So next we have Corinne Rodrigue, followed by Robert Perro. Corinne? Or Corinne? Okay. Robert Perro?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'm actually against the new rule changes. As a wake surfer, and a lifelong boater, we have actually compromised on the last set of rules. And based off the last set of rules, I don't see that we have actually had them in place nearly long enough to get any real scientific data, about whether they work or whether they don't. Also, the 500 foot buffer requirement, the proposed rule requires wake sport zones to be at least 500 feet from shore on all sides. The GIS process treats this as fixed geometry. Historical content is, second here, 2022 petition emphasized shoreline protection and proposed expanded offsets, yet justified zone of just 60 acres. The current proposal change doubles that and applies a uniform 500 foot rule without Vermont shoreline impact data showing why that specific number is necessary. The other thing I want to touch base on too is we hear a lot about invasive species. Well, the problem with invasive species is I actually work around boats. I'm around them all the time. I do covers, I do upholstery work, I do interior work, I do carpets. I have literally seen every type of boat you can possibly imagine come through my shop, and every single one of them has either had a little bit of milfoil on the trailer. Some of them have zebra mussels on them. And I'm talking runabouts, pontoon boats, small fishing boats, right down to even little John boats with a 9-horse motor on it. So to say that wake boats are responsible for the invasive species is really not based in scientific data, because as Greg Woodard had mentioned, the invasive species that actually started to take over some of our lakes came long before wake boats and their ballast had even shown up. Again, I'm opposed to these rules. Leave them the way that they were. They worked fine. Everybody followed them. It was a great compromise. It feels like 1% of the boaters are being targeted and held to a standard that other boaters are not. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next we have Emily Doe, followed by Charles Crampton. Emily Doe?
Someone who you called earlier's mic is working now.
Oh, okay. Well, let's.
I can speak on behalf of Emily Doe. She's unable to attend because of a work conflict. Do you want me to continue, or do you want to go back to the prior person?
Let's go ahead and do your comment, and then who was the person before? Barb Woodard. Then Barb Woodard. Okay. So we'll do Emily and then Barb.
Okay. Okay, good afternoon. Thank you for the time to speak. I've been invested in these hearings for over 3 years. During that time, I've asked verbally and in writing for the actual scientific data that validates the need for these additional restrictions. I have never received it. For those of us who wake surf, we've already compromised reasonably and without complaint. But now we are being pushed further to reduce the number of lakes we can access, again, without evidence. Recent hearings have made it clear that for the opposition, there is no middle ground. Their end game is not collaboration, it is complete abolishment. We also need to be honest about aquatic invasive species. AIS was in Vermont long before wake boats and will remain a challenge even if they are banned. AIS is a universal boating issue, motorized and non-motorized alike, and it requires a separate, honest conversation, not a targeted restriction of one small group. The ANR's mission to build on scientific-based decision-making and balanced use. If the rule isn't backed by measured impacts and enforcement trends, it fails that mission. Right now, this process feels driven by interest group pressure rather than verified findings, which undermines public trust. Before expanding restrictions, the state must provide scientific studies to support the 3,000-foot requirement, ecological justification for 100-acre minimum, and documented data proving that the current rules, which have been in place for less than a year, are failing. Advancing further restrictions by 2026 based on petitions rather than Vermont-specific research is premature. We should be fact-checking claims, not rushing to eliminate a sport based on unsubstantiated pressure. Thank you.
So we'll go to Barb Woodard, followed by Charles Crampton.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for doing this and taking your time. I'm a Vermont resident. I am also a boat owner of both power and non-powered boats. And I have boated on almost every lake and pond in Vermont. I also have a degree in science that supports data and monitoring if it's done correctly by the agencies doing it. I do not support any and all of the current changes by the ANR from the rules of 2024 to the 2026. The questions I have are, what research data has been done in the state of Vermont that provides measurable protection for shoreline and safety in the 500 feet from land and all other objects? And do you have scientific data done by the ANR that supports any of these changes? And do you have data from the last ruling from the 2024 that you have that could show whether that even worked or did not work at all? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so next we have Charles Crampton. Okay. Then we have Mark Amoya, followed by Leanne Harple.
Hi, my name is Mark Amoya. My family has owned property on Lake Bomoseen since 1981. We're going on 4 generations enjoying the lake. And I oppose these new regulations because it's, to me, it's a double standard with the 500 feet. There's no way possible that's going to work because who's at fault if something happens? It's just not going to work. And the invasive species, that taking care of the wake boats is not going to solve the issue. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Laura?
Yes.
Laura?
Your
Hello?
turn.
Hi.
Laura?
Yes.
This is Diane Leader. May I speak for Charlie Crampton, please?
Oh, sure. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, he called me a short while ago. He's not able to attend the meeting tonight, but he asked me to please speak for him. Charlie and his family have the cottage next door to ours, and he is seriously disabled and barely moves without help. He spends a lot of time on the water when he's in Vermont. He is really concerned for his personal safety on the water and his ability to deal with larger, often unanticipated wakes. He supports the changes to the rules, particularly those dealing with safety buffers. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is Representative Leanne Harple, are you on the line?
I am, yes. My camera doesn't seem to be working on this app, but can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. So good evening and thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Representative Leanne Harple and I represent the towns of Albany, Craftsbury, Glover, and Greensboro. The communities I represent care fiercely about our lakes and have stewarded them for generations. Our lakes are more than our playgrounds. They are our wildlife habitats, economic lifelines, and the places of calm and quiet that we can retreat to amid the chaos of the world. Once we lose the health and character of our lakes, it will take decades to get them back if we ever do. In Glover, there is overwhelming agreement that the proposed changes are absolutely necessary. Shadow Lake and Lake Parker are small lakes that cannot absorb wake boats without lasting damage to water quality, shorelines, and rural character. For my communities, these rules are ecologically responsible and long overdue. I also represent Greensboro, which is home to Caspian Lake. Caspian barely clears the size threshold, and that technical distinction leaves residents exposed to the very same risks that these rules are meant to prevent elsewhere. The frustration of my constituents deserves to be heard this evening. I recognize the pressure the DEC is under. Well-funded interests representing only 1% of boat owners are pushing hard to expand wake boat access, but rural Vermonters I represent don't have that lobbying power. Instead, they have lived experience and a personal stake in that outcome. So I'll be honest that these rule changes actually don't go far enough, but they do move us in the right direction. And so when faced with the choice between progress and backsliding, I strongly urge the DEC to adopt them. Protecting our lakes requires backbone, and it requires putting the people who live on and depend on these waters ahead of outside pressure. If we can't stand up in this moment for small lakes, quiet waters, and rural communities, then we need to be honest about who this process is actually serving. Rural Vermonters deserve this from our state. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Danielle Budlong, followed by John Mochel.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Danielle Budlong. I am a property owner and an avid boater. I am speaking on the overall scientific perspective of these proposals. Proposals of this magnitude should be based on evidence that uses direct field studies that are measurable. The ANR proposals are based on theoretical models and emotional assumptions. These are not scientifically valid and therefore have no validity. My questions to you are, what Vermont field trials were conducted? Were peer-reviewed methods used? What uncertainty margins were calculated? And what scientific backed evidence do you have? These public water rules must be evidence-based, transparent, and field tested specific to the waters of Vermont. These proposals exceed the 2024 compromise and lack Vermont-specific evidence-based trials. I ask that you please pause on these 2025 proposals until scientific field testing can be done. I, Danielle Budlong, oppose these changes. Thank you.
Okay, so next we have John Mochel, followed by Jules Wiggers.
Hello, I'm John Michael, and I oppose the 2025 proposed changes to wake sport rules. I am born and raised in Vermont and have been involved in wake sports for almost 2 decades. I want to be clear. I opposed the 2024 wake sport rules, but I accepted it because I thought this was a People Vermont meeting in the middle. The state's own briefing shows that the 2024 approach worked. In the first year, there were no law enforcement complaints or violations. The Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation described the existing rule as among the most productive of its kind. The 2025 proposal is not a small adjustment. It's a statewide escalation based on assumptions and geometry. A 3,000-foot run derived from a simple speed and time scenario and a 500-foot buffer, not just from the shore, but effectively from all other users of the lake. All this without Vermont's shoreline response measurements presented to justify why this number now magically needs to be 500 feet. The goalposts are being moved without evidence. Worse, it creates safety and enforcement problems. If another vessel enters within the 500 feet, the wake boat must stop. This invites conflict and danger. It also makes compliance and enforcement harder, not easier. Are we really going to have our game warden and troopers try and eyeball this? How can this be enforced? There are real issues to be dealt with, not this. If Vermont wants evidence-based rules, the answer is simple. Keep the 2024 compromise, invest in inspection and decontamination, and collect Vermont field data before expanding restrictions statewide. I propose this be funded by kayakers and paddleboarders using Vermont state water access points so they are able to help contribute to keeping our lakes beautiful. Thank you.
Next, we have Jules. Jules Weigers. Nick Cairo, followed by Luke Cuccicelli. Nick Cairo.
Yes, sorry, I'm here.
That's okay. Great.
Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. My name is Nick Cairo. I've been a resident in Vermont for the past 7 years, and moving here is one of the biggest pleasures of my life. I do oppose the new 2025 wake rules. Vermont, we adopted a strict 2024 compromise. The 2025 proposal goes too far in my eyes. Without Vermont field data, it adds a 3,000-foot run based on a simple 12-mile-an-hour for 3-minute calculation with no measurement. It also adds the 500-foot stop rule tied to nearby boats and obstacles, which creates unsafe situations and lets others shut down lawful activity by entering the zone. Until the NAR or ANR shows Vermont-specific shoreline response studies, keep the 2024 rule. Thank you.
All right. Next, we have Luke Cuccicelli, followed by Kathleen Chateau.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Luke Cuccicelli. I'm a Vermont resident. I oppose the proposed 2025 wake sport rule changes and do not support adopting them. These rules would unnecessarily restrict access for responsible boaters and limit recreational use of Vermont's lakes. I urge the state to not move forward with these changes. Thank you.
All right. Kathleen.
Yes, hello. My name is Kathleen Chateau, and I live in Cabot on Joe's Pond. I'm a native of Vermonter. I appreciate this opportunity to speak in favor of the proposed rules changes. The changes would remove Joe's Pond from the list of acceptable wake sport locations. In the spreadsheet prepared in this rules-making process, it seems to be a clear recognition of Joe's Pond's very limited wake sports zone, available area, length, and depth. Normal risk-benefit analysis, the extent of wake sports, points out an enormous public risk in terms of the safety and comfort of other conventional water recreational people, as well as huge unknowable risk to health, including lake quality and balance. Why such an enormous risk for a very private benefit to a small number of wake sports enthusiasts of this non-traditional, unconventional recreational use? The precautionary principle should be applied here to ensure that the natural resource values of public waters are fully protected. And the precautionary principle is a risk management approach in an environmental law and public health that advises taking preventive action against or restricting potentially harmful activities even before absolute scientific certainty of harm is established. Thank you very much. I very much in favor of your newly proposed rules, and I really hope they go through. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have John, followed by John Alessandro.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is John Wooten. We have had a seasonal camp on Lake Parker since 1989. We chose Parker for its relatively small size and quiet summer activities. There are ski and pontoon boats, but most vessels are people powered. There are no resident wake boats on Parker. I support all of the proposed wake sport changes except the elimination of the home lake rule. While I understand ANR's logic to convert the home lake rule to the existing transport no invasives rules, I am concerned that the ANR will not be able, due to limited manpower and funding, to quickly and effectively get a program and decontamination stations up and running for the 2026 boating season. Additional funding will be required. I suggest a modified one lake per season be temporarily utilized until the funding and manpower are available. I believe the minimum depth requirement for wake sports should be increased to 30 feet to reflect the new science as outlined in the Terra Vigilis report, disturbance of lake bottoms to at least 26 feet, and employing the precautionary principle. The 2024 ANR rules cut back many of the proposed wake sport restrictions outlined and supported by science in the original 2023 petition by Responsible Wakes for Vermont Lakes. Compromises were made back then, and no more compromises should be considered now. Thank you for considering my comments and your continuing efforts to protect Vermont's lakes and ponds.
Thank you. So next we have John Alessandro, followed by Sam Romano.
Good evening. My name is John Alessandro, and I represent the Water Sports Industry Association, the nation's leading voice for the towed water sports industry. Thank you for the opportunity to provide feedback on these proposed rules. In 2024, this agency restricted wake surfing to wake sports zones of at least 50 contiguous acres. The practical impact of this was to make Vermont the most restrictive boating state in the nation, limiting wake surfing to just 30 lakes around the state. After just one boating season, the agency began to seek even greater restrictions with little scientific or evidence-based justification. The proposal arbitrarily doubles the minimum lake size for a wake sports zone from 50 acres to 100. But just 2 short years ago, the agency assured boaters 50 acres was sufficient. At 50 acres, quote, wake boat operation could be carried out with minimal environmental impact while also managing the impact on nearshore uses. Even activists in their 2022 petition sought only a 60 acre. The agency in its filing says it relies on the same scientific evidence as in 2024, yet cannot explain why it doubled the required size. Reducing available lakes will force more boaters onto fewer waters, increasing user conflicts. Boaters who use their home lakes today will be forced to trailer their boats elsewhere. The last thing activists think about the spread of aquatic invasive species should want to see. These rules don't address concerns about ballast enhanced boats, they exacerbate them. There's simply no evidence to suggest more rules are needed. Despite claims boating is harming loon nesting sites, Vermont's loon population is at an all-time high. Despite claims boating is harming water quality, phosphorus levels in waterways like Lake Bomoseen are declining, not increasing. Despite claims of user conflicts, law enforcement issued 0 citations for violations of the new rules in 2025. And the ANR itself told legislators last month that the risk of AIS transmission by ballast-enhanced boats was minuscule compared to the thousands of other boats on Vermont waters. Vermont statute requires the, quote, least restrictive approach, yet these rules default to the most restrictive solution. We urge the ANR to reevaluate and abandon this rulemaking effort altogether. Thank you.
All right, so next we have Sam Romano, followed by Catherine Babbitt.
Good evening, and thank you to ANR for holding this hearing. My name is Sam Romano, and I am the Northeast Government Relations Manager at the National Marine Manufacturers Association. I am also a proud native New Englander, and my sister is a graduate of the University of Vermont. We respectfully but strongly oppose this proposal. It is arbitrary, not grounded in science, and unsupported by the record before you. Vermont already has wake surfing rules in place. While we did not support that framework, Vermonters have accepted it and have operated under it in good faith. Those standards took effect in 2024. The EC has reported 0 credible violations. It's being driven by misunderstanding rather than evidence. There is education over regulation. NR says they are committed to using the least restrictive means possible. Yet, this rule seems to do the opposite by singling out an activity that accounts for less than 1% of boats in the state. Amongst many, a central flaw is the completely arbitrary 3,000-foot lake length threshold, disconnected from real-world boating conditions. Wake surfing does not require traveling in a straight line. Operators can gradually turn their boats, making length a poor proxy for safety or environmental. What actually matters are factors that are measurable and enforceable: distance from shore, operator behavior, and traffic patterns. Vermont's public waters are for everyone, hence public. Yet, this proposal would slash wake surfing access from 30 lakes to 18, forcing more boats onto fewer places and creating congestion and access conflicts for everyone. Most respectfully, common sense says that this proposal is creating new problems, not fixing any. Even Vermont's Fish and Wildlife own expert testimony cuts against this rule. At a January hearing, a senior official noted that out of roughly 28,000 boats statewide, only 300 are wake boats, and asked, quote, "What's the risk? It's not with wake boats. It's such a minuscule risk," unquote. For these reasons, this rule should be withdrawn. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comment on the proposed rule.
Next, we have Catherine Babbitt, followed by Joe Stillmiller.
Good evening. I'm speaking for Utaka Tomorrow, the Executive Director of Camp Billings and the Billings Board, staff, families, and campers. Billings is a nonprofit overnight summer camp that has operated continuously on Lake Fairley since 1906. Camp Billings is intentionally affordable, relying almost entirely on tuition. Families' confidence in water safety directly affects our ability to remain accessible to middle-income families. Lake Fairley is central to Camp Billings' daily programming. Hundreds of campers, including novice swimmers and first-time paddlers, use the lake for swimming instruction and boating, including water skiing. These activities depend on calm, predictable water conditions and safe shoreline access. Billings waterfront is located along a highly exposed stretch of the lakeshore adjacent to the wake sport zone, where waves travel unobstructed and strike the shore. As recently as last summer, campers were knocked off swimming docks and floating aquatic equipment by large wakes. Wakes from even a responsibly operated wake boat create hazardous conditions. Billings uses the waterfront from early morning through evening. Because campers and staff are on or nearby the water throughout the day, time of day restrictions on wake boat enhanced boating would not reduce safety risks. The current wake sport rules have proven inadequate for smaller lakes. Lake Fairley hosts 5 long-established camps, placing over 1,000 children on the lake. No other lake in Vermont has such a concentration of youth summer camps. Camp Billings strongly supports the DEC proposed rule changes, which would protect 13 more lakes, including Lake Fairley. Please adopt these rules in time for this summer's camping season to protect children and preserve Lake Fairley as a safe, shared resource for all normal and historical uses. Thank you.
The next person you had was Joe Stillmiller. After Joe, we had Eric Stage, followed by Carrie Clark. Eric Stage.
Yep. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yep. My name is Eric Stage. I want to just make it clear that I oppose these changes. I don't think they're right. So this is a new regulation put in place that you guys are doing in 2026. Currently, in 11 other states in the United States, Tennessee, Oregon, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and South Carolina, they have a lesser restriction, 200 feet. This standard was established based off a study done by NMMA, which found to be sufficient distance to protect wildlife and ensure safety across their lakes. Our current regulation, 500 feet, is double that distance, more than double, and you're considering a much harsher restriction. The data does not support this change. The proposal seems to be based more on feelings than facts. The NMMA study indicates that a distance of 200 feet with a depth of 10 feet impacts sediment levels very minimally. According to the WSIA, at 200 feet, the surfing wave loses approximately 65% of its energy. With Vermont's current restriction of 500 feet, the energy once reaching the shoreline would be about 25%. To provide some context, kind of touching on what Bob Woodard said, wind blowing at 7 to 12 miles an hour will create the same wave that a wake boat will make at 500 feet. From June to September in the state of Vermont, the average wind speed is 7 miles per hour. We need to carefully consider this change as a community and recognize the potential impact such a ruling could have on the future of Vermont as a whole. And a question I had for you, Laura, was a comment you made when you were talking to Lauren Woodard, Splat. You said that you aren't going to take into account the people that put in their feedback on the website based off numbers. So if the majority of people disagree with this, that doesn't matter to you guys, and you are going to go through through it anyway.
Fine. Well, the
Okay.
point that I was making, I will clarify this very quickly, is the way that we make decisions is not based on a vote of who's for and who's against. There is a lot more. We're going to consider all the comments, all the material, the questions that folks are asking, the suggestions they have. It's our decision is not based on how many support and how many propose. Okay. So next, you're welcome. Next up, we have Carrie Clark, followed by Amy McLaughlin.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Kerry Clark, and I greatly oppose the new proposal. I'm a wake surfer and have been for almost 30 years. I've raised my children wake surfing. It's a very unique sport where you get to witness up close the joys and beauty of surfing. I have truly enjoyed sharing the sport in a responsible way over the years. I live in Chittenden, right next to the reservoir, and I've never put my boat in it. I haven't because it doesn't offer good surfing opportunities, like a lot of other small lakes in Vermont. And I hear people worry about the loons and their nesting. And I was born and raised in Minnesota. The loon is the state bird there, and that's where power watercraft was invented. I personally have witnessed kayakers go up to the loon's nest at the reservoir and scare the loons away. The loons on Bombacine have come up to my boat in between sets and have checked us out. I am lucky enough to live 15 feet away from a bald eagle's nest. It's been active for the last 5 years. I also have a gun range. Go figure. We all get along. Nature is unique. The idea that I would fill up my ballast and leave my boat and travel from lake to lake is ridiculous. My boat holds 2,800 pounds. Why would I do that to my truck and trailer? It is silly to even have this discussion. This will get you nowhere as far as traveling invasive species. I feel it is shameful for the DEC to be back here in such a short time to try to change and rewrite it all. In our board, I see zero scientific data to justify this rule. And it is absolutely nuts to be able to swim, paddle, or boat out within 500 feet as soon as I start surfing and shut me down. You are making good people look bad. And at the end of the day, there is not enough law enforcement to implement any of these rules. Think about that. I ask you to keep the 2024 rule in place, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, next we have Amy McLaughlin, followed by Timothy McLaughlin.
Hi, I'm Amy McLaughlin. I am a property owner on Lake Fairley, and my family has been on the lake for 50 years. I do not support any of the changes to the current rule. These new proposed changes are not based on science or facts. Nothing has changed since the original rules were adopted. There has been no reports from Fish and Wildlife wardens of conflict or violations. The current rules are working. Where are the non-biased fact-based studies supporting these new proposed rules? It appears that the only data being considered has come from the Responsible Wakes for Vermont Lakes. I would like to actually reference their own petition for 2022, which supports a lesser continuous acreage requirement that's being here tonight. I want to object to the proposed change from 50 to 100 continuous acres. For the record, in March of 2022, Responsible Wakes petitioned ANR to amend the Vermont Used Public Water Rules and stated that 60 continuous acres were satisfied to them. I believe that 50 continuous acres works. Responsible Wakes clearly outlined their justification in the 60-acre wake sport zone. Their exact quote is, to address the concerns, which they refer to as safety and enjoyment of others, we propose the creation of a 60 continuous acre minimum for a wake sport zone, which would provide adequate space for operation of wake boats while allowing other traditional lake activities to continue. I quote again, their petition says we propose 60 continuous acres for wake boat activities, and this will keep with previous rulemaking and will help maintain public benefit by providing the state for enjoyment of others, less impactful activities such as water skiing, cruising, canoeing, kayaking, sailing, swimming, and fishing. This is in their actual petition. Why did ANR first deem 50 acres sufficient, now propose 100 acres? Why do the requirements keep changing without data? It feels like a moving target with no data behind it.
It's been 2 minutes.
Thank you.
So we're going to go
great.
to
Thank you.
Tim McLaughlin, followed by Ben McLaughlin.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Excellent. Good evening. My name is Timothy McLaughlin, and I am speaking against the proposed rules. I am a New Hampshire resident. However, I spend my summers on Lake Fairley with my wife, children, and extended family. I believe the 2024 rules that were put in place were an appropriate compromise, and I do not believe there has been sufficient additional data gathered to warrant the proposed changes. I would like to maintain the shared recreational use that we currently enjoy on Vermont's public waters. In addition, the ANR themselves has acknowledged that the revised 100-acre size arose from comment rather than any sort of credible scientific data. In summary, I do not believe any additional rules should be put into place, especially in regards to the 100-acre requirement. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so next we have Ben McLaughlin, followed by Charlie Coughlin.
Hey there, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Good evening, everybody. Been an interesting one, an interesting path. I'm going to talk specifically about the compromise, the potential compromise for a lake like Lake Fairley, which the proposed wake sports zone roughly fits our lake. And the discussion surrounding compromises with perhaps single operators in the wake sports zone. We have two wake boats that are both based on Lake Fairley. Questions about others who enter the lake. We can put a sandwich board at the ramp. I'm sure our greeters would be happy to educate them. We're willing to accept that. It seems like a reasonable compromise. I know that the opposition is really not available for compromise, it seems, many times. We've got a long established history of wake surfing on Lake Fairley, very reasonable. All of our, we've done measurements ourselves about the waves that hit the shores of all these camps. And it's, again, smaller than what a regular boat does at 200 feet when we're almost 1,000 feet from shore. So we feel it's very reasonable, and a compromise would fit on our lake. And in a challenging climate, when we propose compromise, what say you? We think it's reasonable. Thanks for hearing me today, and you guys be well.
Thank you. All right, so next we have Charlie Coughlin, followed by Eric Coughlin. Is Charlie on the call? All right. Eric.
Hang on.
Oh,
No, I
sorry?
had it.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
Yep,
this is Charlie Coughlin.
Gotcha.
Had to hit the mic button there. Hi, I have been boating on Lake Bomazene for 20 or 30 years, and I currently feel that the rules that we wakeboard under are satisfactory at this time. They haven't been in effect long enough to do a thorough analysis, scientific and so forth, to make any changes at this point. So again, I'm against any changes going forward. As for any concerns about AIS, I certainly am concerned about that, like everybody else. But I think the focus on wake boats is way too narrow for a couple different reasons. The first one being is there's 250 to 300 wake boats in the whole state of Vermont, a very, very small number. And to concentrate all our efforts on just the wake boat is kind of missing the target. As we heard earlier from one of the individuals, that he sees milfoil or, on all vessels that he looks at. So again, very narrow focus. And it's also under the assumption that the wake boats go from lake to lake to lake. And even if they did, it's such a small number. Okay, you take 10% of 300. Okay, you're talking possibly 30 boats. It's just a small number where we're really not addressing all the boats. And really under the rules, AIS rules, these rules apply to all boats, and we're not looking at those. So I think we're missing the boat literally. And until we put a measurement system in place to inspect all boats, we are never going to address the problem. I also feel that the other rules that we addressed earlier here, the 3,000 run rule, is also unmanageable. It's also creates two sets of rules, one for other motorboats, and then we have rules for wake boats. And I think it's going to be very difficult to manage that. And I just don't think they're realistic.
Thank you. It's been 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So next we have Eric Coughlin, followed by Meg Handler.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Eric Coughlin. I grew up on Lake Bombazine my entire life. It's been awesome, and I just want to say that I'm against the proposed changes. I think 3 items need to be clear before these changes are made. I think first, raising the minimum lake size from 50 acres to 100 acres. There's really no reason for that. I think we should have I think there needs to be documented conflicts. I think we need to have clear environmental impacts of doubling that threshold. And I don't think there's any specific scientific evidence for raising that to 100 acres. I think next, the 1,000-foot, third, the 500-foot buffer from any object. Sorry, kind of lost my place there. I guess my request is simple. I think that we just need to have more data for all these different changes throughout the lake, from the 100 acres to raising the distance from other boats and all of that. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So next we have Meg Handler, followed by Janice Dunham.
I support the proposed amendments. When DEC first implemented its wake sports rule, it acknowledged that public safety had not been fully considered and proposed addressing safety on a lake-by-lake basis through individual petitions. 9 lakes submitted petitions. DEC wisely decided that statewide rule amendments were the more effective way to protect public safety. The current amendments do not move the goalposts. They correct a significant omission in the original rules. Existing science supports these changes, but common sense matters just as much. If wakes are powerful enough to damage shorelines and docks, they are powerful enough to harm people. Some have raised concerns that wake boats would now be required to yield to other users 500 feet away. That principle already exists. Non-motorized watercraft, canoes, kayaks, and paddleboards always have the right of way. The 500-foot setback simply corrects an inconsistency between safety rules for people and safety rules for shorelines. As for the claimed lack of reported conflicts, that argument is not credible. When I asked people whether they have ever reported conflicts, they were surprised to learn that reporting was even an option. They didn't know where to report incidents. or expect doing so would lead to action. Without a clear, accessible, and well-publicized reporting system, it is unfair and unreasonable to treat the absence of formal reports as evidence that conflicts don't exist. For these reasons, DEC's proposed amendments are critical to public safety, and I strongly support their adoption.
Next, we have Janice Dunham, followed by Dawn Edgar.
Hi, my family has owned property and a cottage on Lake Willoughby for more than 50 years, and we enjoy the summer there. We like the quiet and that the water is clean and that it's safe. And I think the proposed rules go to maintain those values. And the argument that these rules are the most restrictive in the nation, which I previously heard a lot, now I hear a little bit. Part of the rule may be, but there have been laws passed in at least a dozen different states that address various problems with wake boats, including on the Willamette River, where 30 miles are absolutely restricted, no wake boats. Where I sit in the summertime, sometime at the put-in, I don't see any enforcement whatsoever. And I have never seen a fish and game person on the river, or excuse me, on Willoughby Lake. The greeters say, "Oh, howdy," but they don't inspect. And wake boats have a though they're a small in number, that is true. And they probably always will be because they're so expensive. But they have a disproportionate effect on invasive species because the ballast is not completely cleared. And when I don't like about the new rules, the one thing I'm really against in the new rules is in section 4, which it says must be inspected if an inspection station is available. And there are only 4 inspection stations in Vermont. So who's going to be inspected? And I don't think that if, to me, that's a very significant word in section 4. And I don't think if should be added because I think it should be required. Nevertheless, it's not going to, we all know it's not going to be enforced.
2 minutes. So next we've got Dawn Edgar, followed by Kaylin Diller. Dawn Edgar. Caitlin Diller. Chris Kano. Chris Kano. We've got Jack Witness, followed by Chris Beans. Okay, that's right. Chris Beans?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, great. Yes, your turn.
Okay. It was suggested that the 2024 was a compromise. I believe it was a starting point. Applaud the increase in ineligible lakes for wake sport. Hopefully this brings us to closer to a tipping point where public concern and environmental impact kind of fade away. The suggestion that wakeboards are being picked on simply because they're larger boats, if anybody understands the industry, which I have one, the regulations that come with those size vehicles are enormous and costly. So because they do have impacts, they are restricted from certain size roads and certain sized areas. And I believe that these smaller lakes kind of are in that same category when it comes to these bigger boats. The suggestion that there's only 1% of wake boats that are currently in the state. We all know that probably, like property taxes, will increase. My suggestion is if you're suggesting that none of this is science-based, I'm the type of guy that would rather be proactive than reactive, so don't wait for the impacts to occur. And the people that enjoy these smaller lakes aren't asking for anything extra. They're just trying to express their concern that a wrecking ball could possibly be coming to these smaller lakes. For me, it seems more intelligent to allow these boats to go play on lakes where they're less noticed and less impactful. And in the future studies of this type of thing, perhaps a little Bill Doyle survey would come in handy.
2 minutes.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay, next we have June Bascom, followed by Phil Dodd.
Hi, thank you for holding this hearing. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to comment at this time, but I'll send in written testimony. So I'll defer to Phil. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Phil?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi.
Thank you. My name is Phil Dodd, a Vermont resident. I'm here to endorse the expansion of the minimum size for wake sports zones and the prohibition of wake sports within 500 feet of other lake users. In my opinion, the inland lakes in Vermont are too small to handle wake sports. Wake boats can damage shorelines and disturb lake bottoms. These boats make more sense on large lakes like Champlain and Memphremagog, and based on comments I've heard tonight, perhaps Bombazine. The large lakes generated by these boats are potentially dangerous for others enjoying traditional uses like paddling, fishing, swimming, and sailing. The problem will only get worse as the number of wake boats increases and bigger and more powerful wake boats are built, and this will drive more and more other users off lakes when wake boats are present. I own and use a lightweight 12-foot pack canoe as well as a sunfish that I trailer to Vermont lakes. A sudden big wave could easily capsize my canoe or sunfish. The same could happen to my 7- and 9-year-old granddaughters who have their own small kayaks. The proposed prohibition on conducting wake sports within 500 feet of other lake users will help to decrease the risks to me, my granddaughters, and other lake users. The statute authorizing the use of public waters, 10 VSA section 1421 says, quote, "The purpose of the rule shall be to further the maintenance of safe and healthful conditions," unquote. This rule change will increase safe conditions on the lakes where wake sports will be allowed, and therefore I fully endorse it. I am not a lakefront property owner, though I suspect most wake boat owners are. In considering this rule change, please keep in mind the majority of Vermonters who do not own or cannot afford lakefront property and who should be allowed and encouraged to get out and enjoy our lakes in whatever boat they own, however small. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we've got Sally and Bob Stager, followed by Dana Fowler.
So I'm reading for them.
Okay.
So I'm reading for Bob and Sally Stager. They're residents of Lake Fairley since 2014. They couldn't be here tonight. We urge the DEC to implement the proposed wake sport rules exactly as written with no carve-outs or compromises. The proposed 100-acre minimum wake sport zone and the 500-foot setback are not arbitrary. They exist because during the statewide rulemaking process, the agency acknowledged that safety was not adequately considered in the current rules. These changes are meant to close the safety gap. For Lake Fairley, this matters deeply. Our lake's wake sport zone is only 90 acres. A single wake boat operating in surf mode effectively dominates the entire usable area, which is surrounded by many camps. This creates an unsafe zone for everyone: campers, paddlers, swimmers, anglers, sailors, and families launching from the public ramp. We and many others have felt unsafe on the water when wake waves arrive with far more energy than traditional ski boats. We avoid going out altogether when wake boats are present, and we have witnessed others on the lake, especially young campers, learning how to sail, canoe, or kayak, struggling to stay afloat when confronted with a powerful surge from a wake boat. It's not about opposing boating. It's about protecting shared access and basic safety on small lakes. Importantly, no new science is required. Existing research on wake energy and wave power already support the 100-acre minimum and 500-foot setback. The proposed rules are a reasonable evidence-based correction to an acknowledged omission. The leadership of Lake Fairley's camps, 3 select boards, and the Lake Fairley Association all support wake sport prohibition here. This is not a fringe position. It reflects the will of the communities most directly affected. Respectfully ask the DEC to resist pressure from a small special interest and to uphold the rules as drafted. Please prioritize safe, fairness, and access for all users by implementing the proposed changes without exception. Thank you for listening and for your work on behalf of Vermont's lakes.
All right. The next we have Dana Fowler, followed by Charlie Page.
Thanks so much. My name is Dana Fowler, and I am a homeowner at Lake Willoughby, and my family's been going to that lake for more than 50 years. I am strongly supportive of the changes to the rule regarding wake sports, and believe we should be keeping the home lake rule as previously defined. We must implement them for the 2026 boating season. There is no going back once we introduce AIS to our inland lakes or once someone is seriously injured. That said, I did want to make a few comments that I believe are important to a number of the arguments being made by wake sport proponents. I'm just going to skip that word. Both tonight and last week. A 2024 DEC document indicated there were no reports of wake sport related accidents or incidents during the 2024 boating season. And several folks before me have indicated that people didn't know how to report. Wake sport proponents have referenced that this fact indicates that no accidents or incidents being reported means nothing has happened and that everyone is coexisting without complaint. Unfortunately, this is incredibly flawed. In December 2024, I attended one of two public meetings that were held on the 9 lake petitions seeking to prohibit wake sports. At those hearings, many speakers described incidents or near accidents they or others had experienced with wake boats. They spoke passionately about how they and the people they knew had modified their own behavior, leaving a lake when wake boats came out or not venturing onto the water if wake boats were present to avoid accidents and incidents and exposing themselves to unnecessary danger. But how often do law enforcement reports get made of any crime? A recent article that I can give details to in my written comment indicates that only a fraction of actual violent crime gets reported, only 40%, in fact, and only 30% of property crime. Nuisance crimes, things like what we're talking about here, not to say that they're crimes, but nuisance type situations.
That's 2 minutes.
Even more rare.
Sorry, we've hit the 2-minute mark.
Yep, gotcha.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Charlie Page, followed by Jean Gerber. Charlie Page?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. My name is Charlie Page. My family has a beach on Lake Willoughby. We've been there for about 125 years. The family has. I support the adoption of many of the proposed changes to the wakeboard sport regulation, but my concern is that the regulation does not go far enough to prevent an infestation and proliferation of invasive species. Secondly, I believe that the proposed rule changes regarding the distances to swimmers and small boats and paddleboards are not based on scientific evidence, but rather on a compromise with the wake sports industry. The safety of others should be first and foremost, and compromises that might jeopardize water safety should have no place in the regulation. I want to say this about boat greeters and inspections, okay? We don't have any real places to get boats cleaned, and all boats should be cleaned, not just wake boats. But it's impossible for the boat greeters to see zebra mussel villigers. They don't have the training. They don't have training manuals. There's no test equipment. The 120 degree water requirement that you rinse out tanks with, and also the inside of boats, that is impossible to verify. And it's also based on prolonged exposure. 140 degrees to clean the outside of boats. Where are you going to get it? Most homeowners don't have 140 degree water. They have 120 degree water. So you'd have to get that done at a professional cleaning station or some place that's set up for 140 degree water. The 2-week quarantine period that's talked about before you bring a boat to another lake, that's not big enough. That's not long enough. These villigers can live for 27 days, according to one scientific study. Okay, there's not enough, there's no funding, there's no definite timeline for
We
establishing
just
cleaning
hit our
stations.
2-minute mark. Thank you.
There we go.
Next, we've got Jean Gerber and followed by Ronald Scott.
I'm Jean, and I thoroughly support these rules, except I don't want that little 90 to 120 acre thing that was in parentheses. For several years, I've worked at 2 of the camps on Lake Fairley, beginning in 1994. I've taught a lot of young children and adults how to paddle a canoe on that lake. And I'm also a wilderness canoe guide for over 40 years, so I know water, I know waves, and I know the danger of big waves. And these waves that are from the wake sports are 2 to 3 times higher than regular ski boats, and they're up to 12 times more powerful. And when I'm out there on the lake and I'm with young people or families with little children in the canoes, and just a regular wake from a regular ski boat comes by, they get all nervous, having to figure out how to not get capsized in a boat. I've never been caught in one of these, waves, but I know these waves are dangerous, and I know that these people would struggle to stay afloat and if they get caught in these waves. And it's not just one waves, it'll be a series of waves. And the other thing is these boats have in Lake Fairley, they take a huge swath of that lake, and there's 4 of the 5 camps adjacent to that area that the wake boats use. And I'm out there trying to get a group of families in the canoes across the lake. We go explore a little stream, but we have to go right through that area that the wake boats use. So I propose that these changes be adopted and implemented for the safety of these inexperienced paddlers on the lake.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Ronald Scott, followed by Diane later. Ronald Scott?
He spoke earlier,
Oh, okay.
very beginning, so.
Oh, great. Thank you. So Diane, followed by Bill.
Thank you, Laura. I've had my say for this evening.
That's right. You have spoken already. Okay. Thank you. All right. Billy Brash, followed by Mark Peterson.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thanks for giving me the time to speak. I'm Billy Brash. I grew up just across the Vermont border in New Hampshire, and I spent summers on Lake Fairley with my grandparents, Ann and Walt Fry. My grandmother still lives on Lake Fairley year-round, and I'm raising my 4-year-old twin boys with the same lake as part of their childhood, and in the summer we're essentially there every weekend. I strongly support the proposed wake sports safety rules. Require a wake sports zone of at least 100 acres, up from 50, and increase the separation from other users to 500 feet. Lake Fairley's wake sports zone is about 90 acres, so wake surfing should not be allowed there, and I urge you not to carve out special exceptions. These rules exist to fix a real safety gap. For my family, this is not abstract. I'm trying to help my boys feel safe in and around water. In the last couple of years, wake surf waves have been so large that my boys have become scared. Among a few early incidents, one of them was knocked over by a wake. It set his confidence back and made him hesitant to go in the water when he saw boats. In our canoe, we've been hit by wakes that violently rocked us, enough that now when we see a wakeboat operating, we turn around. So as well as being a father, I'm a working theoretical quantum physicist. I have a PhD, and the key point here is that danger comes from the energy in these waves, how much push they carry. So wave power that can swamp a small boat or topple a child persists much farther than people expect. And tonight, some have questioned whether out of Vermont studies apply here. I can guarantee that the physics behind wave power does not change to the Vermont border. No new science is required. Furthermore, the lack of an official incident report doesn't mean that there's no impact. It means that families like mine just simply stay off the water. So Lake Fairley is small, crowded with young campers, sailors, anglers, sailors, and wake surfing effectively creates an exclusion zone that's far too big for this lake. So please adopt the rules as written with no special exceptions and implement them in time for the summer. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. All right. I do want to acknowledge that it's about 8 o'clock. We still have about 25 people left to speak. I think we want to hear people, so we can stay. People have to leave, I understand, but the meeting will be recorded so you can hear other people's comments. Also, if you would rather just submit your comments in writing, you are welcome to do so. But I just wanted to acknowledge that it's 7:59. Okay. Next we have Mark Peterson, followed by Stephen Toffel. Mark? Okay. Stephen? Okay. Stephen Toffel? Okay.
Yes, hi.
Oh.
My name's Steve Toffel, and I'm a member of the Thetford Select Board. Lake Fairley is our local lake, along with West Fairley and Fairley, Vermont. Safety is the big issue for us. The camps, the 5 camps that are on Lake Fairley, represent the single largest commercial segment of our tax revenue. Nobody's been hurt so far, but certainly kids have been knocked off their paddle boards, canoes have capsized, and I think we're fortunate that nobody's been hurt, but I don't think we need scientific studies to prove that we should adopt the exceptions that are carved out for Lake Fairley and several other small lakes. I'm skeptical of data supplied by the NMMA, which is the National Marine Manufacturers Association, which is the lobbying group for the wake sports industry. And I would say that we can't compromise on this. You can't compromise with physics, as speaker before me said. The lake's too small to do this. You can't have large waves going and not expect it to affect, especially campers, but others along the lake. So I would urge you to adopt this and adopt it quickly so that we can have these in place by the summer season. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have John Wibble, followed by Lydia Wibble. John Wibble. And Lydia Wibble. Okay. We have also, next we have Rodney Putnam, followed by David Kidney. Are you on the call, Rodney? David Kidney.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name's Dave Kidney. Our family's had a camp on Joe's Pond for 3 generations. The Joe's Pond Association, along with the towns of Danville and Cabot, after the unanimous votes by both towns' Board of Select Boards, petitioned to prohibit wake sports on Joe's Pond. So I think I can confidently say that the vast majority of folks on the pond in the towns of Danville and Cabot are in full support of the new proposed rule, which will prohibit wake sports on Joe's Pond. With regard to the 3,000-foot run requirement, this should have been in the current rule. The fact that it wasn't was an oversight. We know this because the ANR set this out in its final proposed filing, which resulted in the current rule. The filing stated, quote, a 50-acre minimum will allow for a minimum wakeboarding run of 3,000 feet, unquote. It states that this distance is necessary as it, quote, allows for the wakeboat to be 200 feet from other vessels, swimmers, without leaving the eligible zone, unquote. Thus, the ANR concluded that all eligible zones must, quote, allow for a minimum wakeboarding run of 3,000 feet to ensure safety. So the ANR has known from the beginning that to operate safely, wakeboats need a minimum run of 3,000 feet. But it mistakenly thought that a 50-acre minimum would allow for a 3,000-foot run. As it turns out that that's not the case. On Joe's Pond, for instance, In our 54-acre current wake sports zone, the longest possible run is 2,200 feet. So I want to thank the DEC for correcting this oversight and including the 3,000-foot rule, which should have been there in the original rule. I also want to thank you for the 100-acre rule. Both of these rules are necessary to ensure that wake boats
We have
don't
hit
use.
the 2 minutes. Thank
All right,
you.
just
So
thank
next,
you.
yep, thank you. Next, we have Miles Danaher, followed by Andy.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone here to get behind protecting Vermont's most precious resource, our lakes. And I'm sad that dispersions are being cast on those of us trying to protect the lakes, and science being questioned that we all know is true. So I just hope the DEC will have the fortitude to hold this accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. So next we have Andy Kanash, followed by Connor Balestra.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Good evening. My name is Andy Kanash, and I'm highly opposed to the new 2026 proposed regulations. I have lived in the lovely state of Vermont for 27 out of my 28 years. I'm an avid outdoorsman that loves to take part in outside physical activities that include wake surfing. This safe, enjoyable outside activity has a community of people that enjoy being outdoors with friends, family, and even neighbors. We have enjoyed surfing safely and respectfully with the regulations that have been introduced in 2024. There has been no data to show that a small minority of boats are the main problems of shoreline erosion, unsafe passing practices, or creating dangerous situations to the public, as well as bringing invasive species to different bodies of water in Vermont. Any data that has been taken on surf boats causing massive harm to our lakes is outdated and has a small scope of impact compared to the other 99% of boats out there on Vermont waters. If we are to get to the root of the problem, we need to look at the bigger percentage of boats and or non-boats out there that can cause just as much, if not even more harm to our environment than to isolate one small group. If there is such a push to help maintain our lakes, why not get our legislative in Montpelier to give us access to washing/cleaning stations, boat launch checkpoints, more conservation officers that will enforce the current regulations, online report sites, etc. If we continue to hammer down on one small group, the problem will never be resolved, and all we will be doing is slapping a Band-Aid on a trauma wound. Education and quantifiable Vermont-led data on the current system needs to be better before we start adding more hurtful regulations that impact the younger generation. New recent data shows that younger adults are leaving Vermont in droves. It is the highest amount the state has seen. We need to think about the younger and future generations if we want our state to thrive. This data can be found on vermontpublic.org. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Connor Balestra, and followed by Jacob Severin. Connor? Jacob Saborin? Okay, this might go faster. Next, we have Vanessa Riegler, followed by Trajan McGee.
Good evening. Hi.
Hi.
I'm Vanessa Riegler. I'm the executive director of the Aloha Foundation. We're a Vermont nonprofit and have been operating summer camps on Lake Fairley for 110 years. We support DEC's proposed rule changes exactly as written, specifically the 100-acre minimum wake sports zone size and the 500-foot minimum distance from other users, with no carve-outs. The proposed changes are necessary because they directly address a critical and known gap that ANR acknowledged in the existing rules. That's safety. This past summer, we welcomed 1,400 campers and more than 200 counselors at our 3 Lake Fairley camps: Horizons Day Camp, Hive Overnight Camp for Girls, and Ohana Family Camp. And that doesn't include the 2 other camps who have also spoken out tonight. Regardless of driver intent, wake boats are designed to create large, powerful wakes that significantly disrupt calm water conditions, and that introduces serious risks for small craft and the young, inexperienced swimmers and paddlers that we are bringing to camp intentionally. The resulting waves reduce visibility, limit safe access to shoreline, and create unpredictable conditions that are dangerous for children and staff alike. The claim that wake sports have no impact because there are no formal complaints is simply false. In a camp environment, we do not have the luxury of filing paperwork while supervising children on the lake. We make real-time safety decisions. When a wake boat begins running, we pull kids closer to shore, bring small crafts in, and pause instruction. People leaving the water is not a sign of peaceful shared use. It is a sign they feel unsafe. And it comes at the direct expense of our children enjoying the lake, learning to swim, sail, and paddle. For these reasons, and on behalf of our 1,400 campers and 200 counselors on Lake Fairley, I urge DEC to fully adopt the proposed rule changes as written in time for the summer 2026 season. Thank you.
Thank you. So next we have Trajan McGee, followed by Alexis Jetter. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Trajan. Okay. Alexis Jetter.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So my name is Alexis Jetter. I live in Thetford Center, Vermont. I have for 35 years. I'm speaking for my partner and 2 kids who couldn't be here tonight. I think it makes total sense to ban wakeboarding on Lake Fairley and other small Vermont lakes. Like most Vermonters who treasure Lake Fairley, we can't afford to live on the lake, but we live just down the road. Our kids grew up there, learned to swim there, and like us, feel really lucky to have the lake. And for decades, our family and friends have swum together for long distances along the edge of the lake. And we've always felt safe, even when motorboats and pontoon boats come near. We wave to them, they slow down, they wave back and turn away. We've always coexisted pretty peacefully and safely with all the other lake users. But wake boats present a clear and present danger. And I want to be really clear. As swimmers, we don't venture into the middle of the lake or anywhere near it. We swim in groups so that we can be seen. We never venture near any motorized boats, and yet we are now fearful about swimming any distance from shore. Wake boat owners at the last public hearing said that no one has ever registered a formal complaint with the state about wake boat violations. And now I realize other people have thoughts about this. That may be true. I never knew there was a place to lodge a complaint. But here's the thing, that's beside the point. For all I know, the wake boats on Lake Fairley are observing the regulations. That doesn't stop their huge waves from hitting us like ocean swells. And again, we're not out in the middle of the lake. Not even close. Let me tell you what it feels like. The waves come fast, one after the other. We are strong swimmers, but it's really frightening when they hit us full force. We have to stop swimming, face them head on, either diving under the wave or jumping high to avoid getting thrown backwards. And even underwater, you can feel their force. Our children, when small, would not have been able to handle the waves. So my question is why? Why endanger the safety of so many Vermonters who love this lake? The campers, the kayakers, the sailors, the fishermen and women, the paddlers. Why endanger the health of the lake and the safety of the community that loves it? Our lake is just too small.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next we have Lee Shen, followed by Ava Budlaw. Lee Shen?
He is online.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Hi, I'm on the Thetford Select Board and our local lake is Lake Fairley. I support the proposed rule changes because they do not allow wake boats to operate on Lake Fairley, which barely supports a wake sport zone. There are 4 youth camps located right around the wake sport zone on our lake. I urge you to pay close attention to what the camp directors are saying, that wake sports are dangerous to their campers. The camps are responsible for the safety of children as young as 7 years old. Think about that. Young children using small watercraft like paddle boards are just incompatible with wake boats, especially on the narrow body of water that is Lake Fairley. And you can't play favorites and say, oh, the good wake boat can use the lake. If you allow one wake boat, you have to allow them all. We should understand that there are liability and reputation issues associated with running a camp. If they feel there is a chance that campers might be harmed by wakeboat wakes, they will curtail their water recreation. And this is the mainstay attraction for campers. You know, the water of the lake is supposed to be calm and friendly for beginner swimmers and boaters. To curtail these activities would spell the beginning of the end of this tradition of camps for over 100 years. And all this would be for wake boats that don't belong on Lake Fairley and are not even in normal use. please do not retract this rule update.
Thank you. Next, we have Ava Budlong, followed by Paul Budlong.
Good evening. Thank you. Ava Budlong is unable to participate. She is a 14-year-old girl who is working on a school project. She opposes and will submit a written comment.
Okay, wonderful.
So my name is Paul Budlong. I reside in Castleton, Vermont. I have been boating recreationally for most of my life, both non-powered and powered. I want to start by saying some of the things that I've observed tonight. I hear things and statements that are based on emotion, and I think that's okay. I have two teenage girls. I tell them all the time, how you feel is fine. How you deal with it is the conversation we have to have. And I call into point, policy based on emotion leads to statements such as immigrants are bad for the country. A statement that was refuted today by the Cato Institute, which proved that immigrants have been a net positive, both illegal or not here through formal process in the last 30 years. I hear comments about physics, wildlife preservation. And while these seem rational, they're not based in science, they are not based in fact. And so my question is, what trials have been conducted? Are they peer reviewed? What uncertainty margins are calculated? Policy such as this needs to be based on evidence. Policy without evidence is dangerous. The evidence needs to be transparent. These proposals exceed the 2024 compromise and lack Vermont-specific empirical support. I oppose.
Thank you. Next, we have Helena Tilden, followed by Dan Nelson.
Hello,
Hi.
this is Helena Tilden, and I am a greeter at Lake Fairley. And we've had many incidents, not just with wake boats, but my one thing is that I was not the person on duty that day, but it was reported to me that we had an outsider wake boat that came into our waters. And it came so close to a boater, a fisherman that was out in the water. And the fisherman said his wave came around and filled the back of his boat. He had to bail water in order to get back to shore. Yes, we have big fisherman boats and we have little fisherman boats, and this happened to be one of the lower ones. But they are too close to too many people out there, and we have witnessed it more than once. I support this proposal, and I hope it gets passed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And finally on the list is Dan Nelson. Dan Nelson? There were a few other names on the list, but they were repeats of folks who already spoke. So that is everybody.
Laura, could I read mine since we now have time?
Okay.
If you object? Is it okay?
No, you go ahead.
I promise I'll be 2 minutes.
Okay.
Starting now.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Catherine Babbitt from Thetford Center and a board member of the Lake Fairley Association. For the past 5 years, the majority of Vermonters have consistently spoken with one voice. Wake sports do not belong on Vermont's smaller lakes. We strongly support the proposed rule change that would prohibit wake sports on 3 additional lakes, including Lake Fairley. With its 5 summer camps, Lake Fairley is unique. Each summer, more than 1,800 campers, some as young as 7, learn to canoe, kayak, swim, and water ski on the lake. The 2024 rule was created without considering safety. A&R acknowledged this even as it created a 90-acre wake sport zone on our small lake where 4 out of the 5 summer camps are located. This serious safety omission puts all campers and other lake users at risk. Even when a wake boat is operated responsibly, its large waves threaten the safety of all nearby users. Thankfully, the proposed rule changes do consider safety, increasing the WSZ to 100 acres and the distance from other lake users to 500 feet will protect more lakes and the public from large wave-making boats. This would be a great thing. There is deep community support for the proposed rule change. The select boards of Thetford, Fairleigh, and West Fairleigh, 2 local conservation commissions, the Lake Fairleigh Association, and all camp leaders support the proposed change. Wake sports do not belong on small lakes where they negatively impact all other normal users who have peacefully shared the lake for over a century. There is no compromise when it comes to safety. Please move quickly, and I thank you.
All right. Thank you all. We appreciate all of you here in the room and online and your participation today. You know, this is everybody, a lot of people have alluded to this being a very long process. No, kind of the rulemaking way. But please submit comments in writing, and we look forward to going through them all and reviewing your comments and coming out on the other side of that. Thank you. Good night.
Real quick, can you guys hear me or no?
Yeah.
So my name's Connor Balestra. I joined in by phone. I heard my name called and I didn't realize I couldn't talk by the phone. So I joined in on Teams.
Yep, go right ahead.
Hi, so good evening. Thank you for the chance to speak. My name is Connor Balestra. I am a Vermonter, born and raised. I support safe boating, of course, and protecting Vermont lakes, but I do oppose these proposed changing as written. 3 parts need to be clear. Evidence. First, raising the minimum lake size from 50 to 100 acres where documented conflicts, safety concerns, or environmental impacts justifying doubling that threshold, and why is 100 acres the right number? Second, the 3,000-foot surf zone. This isn't a standard benchmark, and I haven't seen studies showing the necessary or more protective than current practices. And third, 500-foot buffer from any object conditions change fast. Both can't stop instantly, and people and other vessels move unpredictably. So it's unclear how this would be measured and enforced fairly. If invasive species are a concern, prevention and enforcement should be consistent across all trailer boating, not focused mainly on one group. My request is simple: show the data before expanding restrictions. Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. And with that, we'll go ahead and stop the recording. We can end the meeting.